Chapter 175. Suddenly, the corner of Ryudo's mouth slightly raised, and he put on a Return of the Dragon King posture, which seemed very arrogant. Then he said to consultant Fujiki, "When will the person collecting the information come?" "In about an hour. They will come here one by one to collect samples from the young male members who meet the age." "Very good. I'll go back and prepare." After leaving such a sentence, Ryudo quickly walked to his room. In fact, the matter of Tokyo digging 3 feet into the ground to dig up criminals was somewhat troublesome for Ryudo. Although he was equipped with the rogue voice-changing mask at the time, which could block his appearance and change his voice. But the voice and appearance could be blocked, but the body shape couldn't be changed. In addition, if Rue Hui could find out that Ryudo and Takatanaki had some friction, the Metropolitan Police Department naturally had no reason not to find out. In this case, if Ryudo's body shape was exactly the same as what the vice principal saw, then he would be easily exposed. Of course, the premise was that Ryudo couldn't change his body shape and body shape. Normal people couldn't make themselves fatter, thinner, taller, or shorter in a day or two. But Ryudo was different. He didn't belong to the category of normal people at all. He was a dignified pay-to-win player. So after returning to his room, Ryudo opened the system that he hadn't touched for a long time, and wanted to see if there were any similar items in the shop. During this time, Ryudo was basically earning money. Not to mention that he often went out in the middle of the night to rob punks. During this period, he also played 2 B-level matches in the Sai River fighting arena. After winning a B-level match, he could get a prize of 30 million. Ryudo played 2 matches, and he got 60 million just like that. If it wasn't for the fact that B-level and above matches needed time to arrange, and couldn't be played every day, Ryudo wanted to buy a house there and earn money every day. After playing for a year and a half, all his attributes would have been maxed out. In addition to the money mentioned by the Sai River fighting arena, the first batch of dividends from the Rulong Security Company had also arrived. In the past month, the Rulong Security Company had accepted more than 10 security missions and earned more than 80 million yuan. More and more people were lining up to ask for money. Of course, the main reason for this situation was that several other relatively large security companies in Tokyo had already collapsed. Under the joint plotting of Ryudo, Sensible, and Gao Yuan, they had messed up several missions, and their reputation was tarnished. Anyway, the security company industry was a competition of lousy. The newly established Rulong Security Company didn't look that bad, so it became the first company that many bosses considered. From this, Ryudo received more than 20 million in cash. Although it wasn't much, considering that this was only the first month's performance, it was already quite good. Including the money from fighting the hooligans and some assets that he had left behind, Ryudo's current capital pool had reached the level of 120 million. 120 million? What kind of concept was that? It was a large sum of money enough for Ryudo to buy 120 jobs. It was a large sum of money enough for Ryudo to upgrade his stats twice. It was a large sum of money enough for Ryudo to buy things in the shop. However, Ryudo didn't plan to spend all of this money at once. He wanted to save as much as he could, and not use it as much as possible. He didn't save so much money to collect interest but to save a person. To save a person who had helped him a lot, Ruehue Kamishiro. In order to prevent Rue Hui from dying due to illness like in the original timeline, Ryudo has changed his short-term mission to save this kamikaze family head. But saving Ruehue wasn't easy, because her terminal illness wasn't an injury, but an illness. After refreshing the shop, Ryudo also tried to spend 10 million to buy a hooligan first aid pill for Ruehue, but it didn't have any effect. After all, the second time he bought the pill, which was twice as expensive, it only said can cure most injuries, and didn't say can cure most injuries. Injuries and illnesses were different. Even if a scion could recover quickly from an injury, they could still die of a heart attack. However, there was indeed something in the shop that could cure injuries, and it was called Hooligan 100 Immortal Pill. The description of this immortal pill was, with one pill, all illnesses will disappear, skin will become supple, and you will become a new person. It felt like after eating it, one could become an immortal, cleansing one's marrow and forging one's bones on the spot. However, the price of such a useful item was also quite reasonable. The first pill costs 1 billion. In fact, from an objective point of view, 1 billion to achieve the effect of becoming a new person was really worth it. The price was ridiculously high. Unfortunately, Ryudo couldn't take out that much money. Ruehui could take out 1 billion, but Ryudo couldn't ask her in advance. After all, if he directly told her, "You give me 1 billion, I can cure your terminal illness," it would feel like a swindler swindling money. No one in their right mind would believe it. Therefore, Ryudo planned to first take out 1 billion to buy the medicine for Ruehui to eat, and after her terminal illness was cured, he would let her compensate him with 1 billion. At that time, Ruehui knew that Ryudo wasn't joking, and would certainly compensate him with such a large sum of money. Maybe there would be more returns, hehe. However, even if it wasn't the time to spend extravagantly, Ryudo still had to take out some money to deal with this situation. Beep 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 beep. Just as Ryudo was lying on the bed in his room looking at the shop, thinking about what to buy, Sensible's phone suddenly rang. "Hello Sensible, what's wrong?" "Boss, the Metropolitan Police Department is investigating all the Kyoto and similar organizations in Tokyo. They are looking for a criminal with great fanfare. You should know about this. I know in less than an hour, they will come to me to collect information. Do you have any suggestions?" As far as I know, the one responsible for the Rulon Group is the Search Section 1 Chief Tokushima Rinka. She is a ruthless character. It's better not to provoke her. Since he knew that the chief of the Search Section 1 was collecting information on the Rulon Group, Sensible had already thought of the trouble that might arise on Ryudo's side. Search Section 1 First Division. This department had a pivotal position in the entire Metropolitan Police Department system. They were in charge of murder, robbery, assault, sexual crimes, and the worst criminal cases. Only the officers from the search department could wear a gold-framed red circular badge with the words S1 SMPD on the collar of their suits, which represented the difference between them and the other departments. It was no exaggeration to say that this was the most elite police force in Tokyo, second only to the special forces and other unconventional armed forces that dealt with various large-scale incidents. And the section chief who led this batch of police force, with the title of Ghost of the Investigation Department, Tokushima and Hana, was the elite of the elite. He had made many outstanding achievements, and in his 30s, he was promoted to the police inspector, which could be said to be an exaggeration of the super high position. After receiving Sensible's reminder, Ryudo first frowned, then nodded and said, "Tokushima Rinka. It's her I know." "Boss, it's good that you know. Try to have a good attitude towards her. Don't go against her, otherwise it will be difficult to clean up. That woman is really difficult to deal with. Indeed, her brain is indeed a bit dirty. Then that's it, I still have something to do, I'll hang up first." After hanging up the phone, Ryudo's mind appeared a woman with short hair, a beautiful appearance and a strong figure, but the way she did things was quite scary. Search Section 1 Chief, Tokushima Rinka. In the game Red Album 2, No Survivors, she was a big character with a lot of scenes, and she was also the head of the Tenmu Conglomerate Guard Department. That's right, Tokushima Rinka was the chief of the Metropolitan Police Department on one hand, and the head of the Tenmu Conglomerate Guard Department on the other hand. She had two identities, and the former identity was to serve the latter identity. In other words, this guy was I Am's subordinate, a nail that I Am inserted into the Metropolitan Police Department. Similar nails could be found everywhere in the government of Tokyo. After all, I Am had already penetrated the official system in these years, and there were people everywhere. Although Tokushima Rinka's position wasn't the highest among them, she was the most useful. After all, she was the chief of the Search Section 1. As the saying goes, it's better to be in charge than to be in charge of a county. Rinka could really be in charge of a lot of places. It could be said that she provided a huge help to I Am in turning the country upside down in the later stage. It's just that Ryudo didn't think that he would be able to meet Tokushima Rinka so early. But since she came to find him, he had to think of a way to deal with her. Tokushima Rinka. Wait. If I remember correctly, this woman seems to be a love-struck idiot? And she's also a masochist? Thinking about it, Ryuto suddenly thought of some descriptions of the woman in the game. Rinka was beautiful, dignified, determined, and impartial. She often had a straight face and was very difficult to get close to. She was an excellent police officer who could shoulder the title of chief. But if she was really as serious as she looked on the surface, she couldn't be a spy sent by I am that lunatic. So under the surface of the iceberg, the real Rinka was a love-struck idiot who had no resistance to handsome men, and she had a strong masochistic hobby. If the other party was a handsome man, her attitude would be much better. Otherwise, it was as bad as it could be. It was so bad that you would wonder whether she was a police officer or a hooligan. There's a way. Although it was a bit of a loss, the money that should be spent still needs to be spent, and the advantages that should be taken advantage of still need to be taken advantage of. Sigh. After sighing, I, Ryuto Kiryu, am actually reduced to selling my body. Ryuto happily pressed the LV3 charm upgrade button. At the same time, he also asked the servant to help find the most handsome set of clothes, and called the best hairstylist nearby, ready to fight an earth-shattering battle of beauty in a while. Chapter 176. When it was close to 7 or 8 o'clock, a few different cars drove onto the street where the Rulon Group headquarters was located. Anyone who knew a little bit about the industry would know that this kind of car was the Metropolitan Police Department, or the Search Department. As long as this kind of car appeared, it would inevitably be accompanied by some major case, and it would cause a storm in the city. Screech. Accompanied by a burst of braking sound, the car stopped outside the Rulon Group headquarters. The police officer who accompanied the first car quickly walked to the back and opened the back seat. A long leg wearing flesh-colored stockings and high heels stepped out. Because of her position as the section chief, Teshima and Hana didn't need to wear the police uniform all the time, but wore a dark gray tight professional suit. Under the short and narrow skirt, two slender and well-proportioned legs, wrapped in flesh-colored stockings, were exposed. The pointed black high heels and neat short hair made the female section chief look quite capable, and her aura was also very strong. However, even if she wore such a professional and serious outfit, it still couldn't hide Teshima and Hana's outstanding appearance. She was indeed very beautiful. There was not the slightest flaw in her delicate and pretty facial features. Her pretty face without makeup looked quite clean. Her slender eyes gave people a cold feeling. She was obviously a nice beauty. Capable, elegant, serious, trustworthy. Different from those women who used fancy clothes and makeup to dress themselves up like butterflies. And Hana could be said to be the perfect representative of the word professional woman. Or from the outside she was such a person. As for the inside, it was better not to delve into it. After getting out of the car, Hana lit a cigarette that she was used to smoking, took a deep breath, and felt the stimulation of the smoke filling her lungs. Then, she used her usual cold tone to order her subordinates. Go in and search carefully, don't let anyone go. Yes. With the section chief's order, more than 10 police officers followed behind her and rushed toward the door of the Rulon Group headquarters. When they arrived at the door, Hana didn't knock on the door, nor did she press the doorbell next to it. She just took a step forward and slammed her right hand in front of the door. The next moment, the thick solid wooden door was directly broken with a crisp crack sound. There was a sturdy bolt behind the wooden door. Logically speaking, even a strong man would not be able to break it. But with Teshima Rinka's palm, the thick door bolt actually broke, as if performing a magic trick. Obviously, Tokushima and Hana was definitely not the civilian police officer she appeared to be. Her combat strength was so high that no one in the Metropolitan Police Department could compare to her. Again. The bad habit of the section chief was that he never liked to knock on the door. When their section chief walked inside, the servants who were about to open the door stared at them with their mouths agape. The police officers who were being stared at showed awkward expressions. But no matter what, a search was a search. When the officers from the search department arrived, Mr. Fujiki greeted them politely. Section Chief Tokushima. All the male members of the Rulon group, who meet the age requirements, have gathered here. You can start to register one by one. Where is your so-called young master, Ryudo Kiryu? There are too many people here. He is waiting in the living room. I will bring the officers there in a moment. No need, I will personally go and greet him. After glancing at Mr. Fujiki, Inhana walked toward the living room with a cigarette in her mouth. It was as if she didn't care about this group of extreme Dao. This woman humph. But even so, Mr. Fujiki didn't dare to say anything. After all, there were many rumors about Tokushima and Hana, and they were all sensational stories. Basically, the section chief of the search department would do anything to solve a case, and she would never be restrained by something as boring as morality. Her style was very free. She once locked a suspect in a freezer for 48 hours. When he was about to die from the cold, she pulled him out to warm him up. Then she threw him back into the freezer. In the end, the suspect couldn't take it anymore and was forced to confess. She once led a team directly to a certain extreme Dao base and fired heavy firepower without asking until everyone inside was turned into a hornet's nest. She once personally drove a police car to hit a robber who was trying to escape. The robber was directly sent flying dozens of meters away. After landing, she accidentally ran over the robber and turned him into a salted fish. In the eyes of the extreme Dao, this woman was a police officer who was more ruthless than the extreme Dao. She was the type who killed without blinking an eye, and because she was very good at writing reports, Inhana could always use various methods to wash away all the excessive crimes she committed. This led her to rise step by step, and she stepped on countless corpses to reach a high position. Over time, the people in the Yodo circle had formed a consensus, which was to never provoke Tokushima and Hana, because no matter how ruthless you were, you would never be as ruthless as her. However, just as advisor Fujiki brought Lin Hua to the reception room, the head of the search department muttered to himself while puffing on a cloud of smoke. Ryudo Kiryu, the man who escaped from Sama time and time again, and even killed the deputy director of the secret department, Misty Demon. Are you a lucky person? Or do you have the ability to reach this level? I'm really curious. That's right. The main reason why Tokushima and Hana came here in person was because she was curious about Ryudo. As a spy of the Tenma group, she naturally knew a lot of inside information of the group. After all, the name Ryudo Kiryu had long become a big topic of conversation in the group. But curiosity was curiosity. If Ryudo Kiryu was a man with real ability, it would be fine. If he was just a lucky man without any advantages, Tokushima and Hana would never let him go. At that time, I will definitely catch you and throw you into the cold room. Hiss. Before Hana finished this sentence in her heart, she and Fujiki had already arrived in the reception room and saw the handsome man sitting on the sofa, like a prince with a glass of red wine in his hand. The moment she saw this young master, Tokushima and Hana only felt her heart beat faster, as if it was going to fly out from somewhere with some strange liquid. Her rosy lips opened slightly, and the cigarette in her mouth fell to the ground. Her breathing was rapid, her eyes quickly widened, and her body became stiff. This sudden change was even noticed by consultant Fujiki on the side. For Fujiki, who had been in the underworld for so long, and had dealt with Hana more than once of course, he knew that this female section chief had a preference for handsome men. This was also human nature. After all, Hana was a normal woman. It was not strange for her to like handsome men. And Fujiki had to admit that the young man sitting on the sofa was really attractive to women. The young man sitting on the sofa was naturally Ryudo Kiryu, but he didn't look like the usual slovenly little hooligan. The luxurious golden hair was obviously done by the hairstylist. After re-perming and dyeing, it showed a texture that was not cheap at all. A few of the golden strands were softly placed on the forehead, and the breath of youth rushed to the face. Such an elegant, upper-class hairstyle and hair color, and the neat gray suit on his body, the spotless black trousers and leather shoes, gave a strong sense of chic. Ryudo's appearance was quite handsome. His skin was white, his nose was straight, and his posture was tall and straight. It was just that he had never tidied himself up properly, and many of his highlights were covered by his fierce aura. So it was not very obvious that he was handsome. Now that his charm had been raised to the level of LV4 charm, international warrior, the temperament that exuded from his gestures was impressive. Coupled with his excellent taste in clothes and proper tidying up, it was natural that he had been reborn. Full of seductive charm, luxurious and with a hint of melancholy at the same time, he was like a noble young master who had been weathered since childhood, but always stuck to himself. This was the feeling that Ryuto Kiryu gave people now. Unknowingly, let alone in Hana, even Fujiki, who had watched Ryuto grow up, was stunned. What's going on? How did young Master Ryuto become so handsome? He was simply not the same person as before. If the average score of Ryuto's appearance and temperament was only 70 to 80 points before, and when he opened his mouth, the current him was already close to the full score of 90 points and above. His originally handsome appearance, coupled with the powerful charm of an international superstar, as well as the meticulous care of his clothing, hairstyle and makeup, presented this kind of breathtaking feeling. "Oh, you're here, Miss Tajima." When Tajima and Hana, and advisor Fujiki walked over with sluggish steps, Ryuto also slowly stood up. The corner of his mouth raised into an elegant arc, and he spoke to Inhana in a graceful tone. For a moment, Inhana's eyes were filled with a pair of deep and mysterious eyes like moist black jade, exuding a charming charm. Her ears were filled with a voice that did not match her age, but with a rich mature charm. This guy fell for it. When he felt that this ghost searcher was in a state of being enchanted by his extraordinary charm, Ryuto struck while the iron was hot, picked up a wine glass, and affectionately poured red wine into it, and handed it over. "This is 2005 Romani Conti. It's suitable for a beauty like you. How about you taste it with me?" According to Ryuto's knowledge, in addition to liking beautiful boys and smoking, Tajima and Hana also liked to drink. So he prepared the best wine, plus the best of himself, ready to set a trap for this guy. "Me? Huh?" Looking at the wine glass Ryuto handed over, and Hana took a step back and tried to refuse. "Wait, I'm working now, I shouldn't." "Don't say that, just treat it as red grape juice." "Who said you can't drink red grape juice at work? As a person, you should know how to enjoy life. After all, life is short, right?" After forcefully stuffing the wine glass into Inhana's hand, Ryuto winked at her with his left eye, and gave her a charming look. Now this autumn spinach directly shattered Inhana's last line of defense. She reached out and looked at the glass in her hand, smelled the wine fragrance floating inside, and looked at the handsome boy in front of her. From this moment on, Tajima and Hana fell into the abyss. Chapter 177. Desire was like water. Rationality was like a dam. Rationality usually blocked desire, just like a dam blocking water, preventing the water from flowing downstream. But if the water in the dam was full, or even if there was an explosive growth, there would be problems. Especially when the dam was broken, the scene caused was even more terrifying. Today's Tokushima and Hana was obviously in a state where the dam was broken, and the water was everywhere. After all, alcoholics were like this. As long as she took the first sip, it was impossible for her not to take a second sip. It was like, I can only drink a little. After a sip of wine, it would become, I can only drink a little bit. Therefore, after the first sip of wine went into her stomach, Inhana drank faster and faster, and her face became redder and redder. At first, the female section chief seemed to be a little restrained in front of Ryuto. After all, this kid was really too handsome, especially that strange charm that made her heart beat faster. But after 3 or 5 glasses of wine, after the wine gave her courage, she began to lean over with a smile. "Ryuto-kun, can I call you that?" She looked at Ryuto with eyes that were about to overflow with desire. She leaned forward slightly, reached for the armrest of the sofa, and put her head close to the man. Because Consultant Fujiki had been driven away, and the reception room was closed, now there were only the two of them here, and no one had to worry about anything. "Of course, then I'll call you Inhana." In the face of such a drunk alcoholic, Ryudo put on a professional male PR smile and replied in a charming tone. Ah, you are really understanding. After a few giggles, Hana turned over with the armrest and sat on Ryudo's knee. Oh, this is really not bad. Although Ryudo was the one being harassed now, he had to say that he felt pretty good now. No matter what, Tokushima and Hana was also a great beauty, and she was the kind of big sister that Ryudo had never met before. She was in her early 30s. From her appearance to the way she dressed, she seemed to belong to the abstinent type. It was as if she had no interest in men at all. She was very cold and unapproachable. But in fact, there was a monster hidden in Lin Hua's heart. It was a monster called the Carnivore. It would fly out in the middle of the night and look for handsome men to absorb their vitality. After drinking a few mouthfuls of wine, the woman's inner desires were completely released. Her behavior and expression became bolder, which was in sharp contrast to her appearance. The more serious the ascetic character was on the surface, the more irresistible it was when he revealed his true colors. In addition, her appearance and figure were excellent, so when this woman sat on his lap and felt her supple buttocks pressing against him, Ryudo couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Ryudo-kun, I really want to eat you. Can I? At this moment, Lin Hua reached out and wrapped her arms around Ryudo's neck. She put her head close to his neck. As she spoke, she stuck out her pink tongue and licked there. A slippery and sticky feeling that he had never experienced before spread out. The air was filled with a pink atmosphere, and Ryudo almost had the illusion that he was being eaten. Not good. This was too bad originally. Ryudo only planned to seduce this silly woman, so that she would be magnanimous in this search. However, he didn't expect Lin Hua's seduction to be so much stronger than he imagined. If this continued, he might end up in trouble. No. How can I let down 3 wives and 1 mother-in-law? I can't give my first time to this woman. If it's not my first time, I can still consider it. So just as Lin Hua straddled him and was about to give Ryudo a passionate French kiss, the latter reached out and pushed her away slightly. Oh, don't be shy. You're so cute, hee. It's not about being shy. There are still a lot of people outside, and they're all brought here by you. Don't mind it. Let's have some fun here. They won't come over to fight. Dong 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 dong. Just as Lin Hua was about to say, they won't come over to disturb. Let me do it. A knock on the door came from outside the reception room. Just in time. When he heard the knock on the door, Ryudo suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Lin Hua, on the other hand, frowned, and a fierce look suddenly appeared on her face. After the knock on the door, an unfamiliar voice from outside shouted inside. Chief Teshima, most of the information of the people outside has been collected. Only Ryudo Kiryu is left. Is he inside? Bastard. I haven't even had a good time yet, so I have to go back and do it myself, damn it. After gritting her teeth, Lin Hua looked at the little fresh meat in front of her that was almost swallowed into her stomach and could only get up from the sofa regretfully. Next time, Ryudo-kun, sister is looking forward to seeing you again. Before leaving, Lin Hua kissed Ryudo's face, and after tidying up her appearance, she pushed the door and walked out. After going out, Lin Hua said to the police officer outside angrily, Let's go. Inform everyone to get off work immediately. I have an urgent matter to go home. When he heard her words, the police officer who came to inquire asked doubtfully, But there is no information about Ryudo Kiryu. Height of 1.9 meters, weight of 230 pounds. Find someone to record the voice, that's all. This is also possible? Originally, the police officer wanted to ask more clearly, but Lin Hua looked at him with angry eyes, and he was scared to turn around and run away. Tonight, Lin Hua was already very annoyed that she didn't have a good time. She couldn't go up and down, so how could she have any thoughts to collect information about Ryudo? She could just deal with it casually. However, next time, sister will definitely collect information for you. He, Ryudo Kiryu hiss. After sticking out her tongue and licking her rosy lips, Lin Hua led the team away at lightning speed, and she abandoned the team halfway and let them go back to report on their own. She quietly sneaked back home, As for why Lin Hua was in such a hurry to sneak back home, she was probably sleeping. I don't know, and I don't dare to say. Young Master Ryudo, they all left. Are you okay here? After sending away the guys from the search department, Consultant Fujiki returned to the reception room again and asked Ryudo, who was wiping his face with a tissue. Ah, it's okay. She shouldn't have carefully measured my physical data, so she just fooled around. When Ryudo heard the data that Lin Hua casually reported when she left, he almost laughed on the spot. He was 1.9 meters tall, 230 pounds, and his voice was recorded by a random person. It would be strange if they would find out that he was a criminal. Moreover, this was personally investigated by the section chief, so no one would suspect him of fraud. In other words, judging from Tokushima Lin Hua's usual style, even if someone suspected him of fraud, they wouldn't dare to say it. Thus, with Lin Hua leading the group away, Long Do was able to overcome the crisis caused by him accidentally beating up a member of the imperial family. Thanks to his handsome face, Long Do was able to successfully overcome the crisis. At this moment, Consultant Fujiki looked at Ryudo with a strange look, as if he wanted to say something, but he was too embarrassed to say it. After Ryudo noticed it, he asked casually, "Uncle Fujiki, what's wrong? If you have something to say, just say it." You didn't do anything to that woman today, right? After a moment of hesitation, Fujiki asked in a somewhat awkward tone. After all, he was an uncle in his 40s or 50s. It was a bit strange to ask a teenager if he was done to by a woman in her 30s. It felt like he was a pimp. No, just a little. Phew, that's good. Consultant Fujiki breathed a sigh of relief and smiled bitterly. You have the direct bloodline of the Rulong group. If it was stolen by that woman, it would be troublesome. So that's what you're thinking about. Don't worry, she won't want to steal any bloodline. The process of stealing the bloodline is what she wants. Well, but I didn't think that young master could become so handsome after tidying up. If you go to the nightclub now, most of the girls will be fascinated by you. Suddenly, Consultant Fujiki took 2 steps back and looked at Ryudo with appreciation from top to bottom. Consultant Fujiki had been in the underworld for so long, and he had seen a lot of handsome men and beautiful women in nightclubs. Kamadachi, at night, was a real demon's den. All kinds of handsome men and beautiful women walked on the street, especially those male PR men who specialized in cheating women's money were even more handsome. But even the most professional male PR men in Japan might not be as handsome as Ryudo today. In Fujiki's view, his young master's appearance and temperament were magical. It was not as simple as a handsome appearance, but it was an addictive feeling. Although the male PR men in the nightclub looked very handsome, but after looking at them for a while, he could feel that they were just handsome embroidered bags. Other than being handsome, there were some weeds inside, and they were not very useful. But Ryudo was different. The more he looked at him, the more he could feel this man's alluring mellow charm, like the Romani Conti in 2005. This was also a matter of course. After all, Ryudo had experienced so many things. His temperament was already very different from ordinary people. How could a group of ordinary handsome men, who sold their appearance to make money, compare to him? Even if Ryudo were to shoot a movie now, he might immediately become an international level star and become famous overnight. This was the combined power of LV4 charm, plus a good appearance, and the aura of a young master. It could be said that he was a walking male bomb. Is that so? I'm so bad *SS now. After being praised by Consultant Fujiki, Ryudo also picked up the phone and looked at his face. Beep 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 beep. At the same time, Colored Glaze's phone call happened to come. She should want to ask about the investigation. By the way, since I'm so handsome now, then I'll just show it to my first wife and see if Colored Glaze likes it. After considering this, Ryudo did not answer the call, but turned his head and called a video invitation. When the video invitation was accepted, Ryudo reached out and touched his hair, and released a charming smile to Colored Glaze. Chapter 178. After the video call connected, Kanzaki Colored Glaze's delicate and beautiful face appeared on the screen. At the same time, she couldn't help but ask, why video call? Colored Glaze originally wanted to ask why a video call was needed. Wouldn't a voice call be better? But halfway through her sentence, she saw the dragon head's face that was several times more handsome than usual. Although Ryuto was usually quite handsome, after specially dressing up and increasing his charm, he had undergone a qualitative leap. He went from a handsome delinquent to a top-notch handsome guy. Thus, when Colored Glaze saw his face, she was instantly stunned. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. Ryuto was obviously very satisfied with his first wife's shock. Are you dizzy from my handsomeness? Hurry up and praise me. So he smiled and asked, how is it? Today so stupid. What? But what Ryuto didn't expect was that Colored Glaze didn't hesitate to say so stupid. She looked at the handsome face that looked like a TV star's on the screen and said in disdain, you did your hair, put on makeup, and even changed into such formal clothes. Who are you? Are you planning to be a male host? Disgusting. You don't have to be so rude. Ryuto originally thought that Colored Glaze would have a wow, you're so handsome, I love you so much type of reaction, but it turned out to be such a reply. She even used the word disgusting. However, when Colored Glaze heard this, she didn't hold back and replied, face? You know what face is? Don't you know what kind of person you are? Do you think it's very dignified for a young master to dress up so extravagantly? The Rulon Group has changed its job to a male host club? You're too. Stop talking nonsense. If you dress up like this again in the future, don't appear in front of me again. Goodbye. Colored Glaze hung up the phone after saying something that sounded very unpleasant. Her tone and attitude were very bad. Just as Ryuto was at a loss for what to do, the dancing costume in Colored Glaze's room revealed a puzzled expression. Young miss, why are you so angry? He seems to have deliberately dressed up to please you. What's wrong with that? Dancing Costume had also seen Ryuto's appearance on the phone. At least in Dancing Costume's opinion, he was indeed very handsome and could attract girls. Generally speaking, wasn't it normal for a young man to look for a girl after carefully dressing up to let her see his most handsome side? Moreover, Ryuto was indeed very handsome after dressing up. Dancing Costume could not help but feel her heart beat faster when she looked at him. Since Colored Glaze liked Ryuto to begin with, she should be even more excited. Therefore, Dancing Costume could not understand why Colored Glaze was so angry. However, Colored Glaze heard her words and said angrily, what's wrong with that? You should ask yourself, what's so good about that exaggerated and gaudy dressing up? It's completely tasteless. It's completely tasteless. In fact, Ryuto usually has no taste. Speaking of this, Dancing Costume could not help but think of Ryuto's usual appearance. Although Ryuto usually could not be said to be ugly, there was a lingering ruffian aura that could not be removed. It was the kind of feeling that was unique to gangsters. Coupled with that guy's glib tongue and frivolous expression, he gave people the feeling that although he was handsome, he was also a ruffian. However, Ryuto just now was different. After tidying up and changing into a suit, and after adjusting his appearance, the ruffian aura on him had mostly dissipated. It was as if he had taken on a new look. If Dancing Costume had to choose between the Ryuto just now and the usual Ryuto, she would definitely choose the serious young master in a suit, and not the usual talkative guy. Dancing Costume, if you only look at the surface, then you're still at the first level. However, Colored Glaze pursed her lips, as if expressing regret at Dancing Costume's level. No miss, do you really think that Ryuto just now was not handsome? Handsome my ass. It's so different from usual. I don't feel anything about it. Usual. Do you think that he's more handsome normally? Of course, the Ryuto that I like is not such a superficial person. He has an unruly gaze, a fierce expression and a sinister smile. He exudes an aura of not a good person from head to toe. As Colored Glaze spoke, she lifted her beautiful chin slightly, as if she was recalling her memories of Ryuto Kiryu. In the gloomy seaside cottage, in front of the god statue in the courtyard, in the garden of the school, the man who appeared in front of Li was always like this, and not the kind of rich young master with a greasy hair and powdered face. I don't think that Mrs. description of him is a compliment at all. Seeing that Miss seemed to be immersed in her beautiful memories, Dancing Costume could not help but break out in a cold sweat. Indeed, he's not a good person, but he understands what I want and what I need. This is something that no other good person can do. Colored Glaze completely understood Dancing Costume's meaning, but in reality, Dancing Costume was indeed on the first level, Ryudo was on the 5th level, and Colored Glaze was in the atmosphere. In Colored Glaze's past life, there were many people like Ryudo who wore a suit and combed his hair. They looked quite handsome, and they behaved very elegantly. In her past life, Colored Glaze had seen a lot of them. Every time she went to a banquet or other activities, similar guys would swarm over and show their gentlemanly demeanor to the eldest daughter of the Kanzaki family. Indeed, they were very handsome, cultured, had good family backgrounds, and were very knowledgeable. From a societal perspective, they were impeccable. However, such people dared to be rude to the Kamiyoshi, dared to say, "I'm marrying your miss to a cat house?" Dared to disfigure the statue that the Kamiyoshi had worshipped for generations? Most of the righteous people were dog butchers, and most of the heartless people were scholars. Those young people who were born in a prestigious family, had 3 to 5 degrees from famous schools, worked out every day to maintain their physical and mental health, looked handsome, dressed fashionably, had an annual salary of tens of millions, and had a limitless future. Who would be willing to offend the Kamiyoshi clan for Colored Glaze? Who would be willing to gamble their life and future? No, it was impossible. Only that fierce-looking young man with a head of poorly dyed blonde hair and an unruly aura could do this. I had already given up on my life a long time ago. I planned to be a vegetarian king, like Mother for 20 years. And when I was old, I would come out and find a random man to have a child with. It was that little punk who gave me hope, so in my heart, he was the most handsome. After sighing, Colored Glaze said in a firm tone, "Miss." After understanding Colored Glaze's meaning, Dancing Costume couldn't help but feel moved, and her impression of that stinky punk seemed to have improved. But she immediately reacted, and showed a strange motherly smile to Colored Glaze. "Dancing Costume, why are you looking at me like that?" Being stared at by Dancing Costume with such an expression, it was Colored Glaze's turn to feel strange. "Because I suddenly realized that this seems to be the first time you've said that you like that little hooligan. It's really worth celebrating." Before this, whenever Dancing Costume asked Colored Glaze if she liked Ryudo, Colored Glaze would say, "Who likes him? I'm just using that guy to do things." But just now, Colored Glaze didn't give a perfunctory answer, and directly expressed her feelings, which made Dancing Costume very surprised. "Huh, is that so? It seems to be true." After being reminded by Dancing Costume, Colored Glaze realized that she really did say something she shouldn't have. For example, "The Ryudo I like isn't such a superficial person. In my heart he's the most handsome," and so on. Normally, Colored Glaze would never say such things even if she was beaten to death. Ah! Suddenly, Colored Glaze's face turned as red as a ripe apple, and even her round earlobes were dyed red, looking very cute. Dancing Costume, I order you to forget everything you heard before." "Ahem, what should I do? I'm a person who can forget, but I accidentally typed those words into a text message." "Text message? Wait, who do you want to text?" "The sender seems to be Ryudo Kiryu. Miss, don't come over, okay? Or I might accidentally press the send button." "Dancing Costume, you dare threaten me?" I don't dare. Compared to the miss who dares to directly express her love, my courage is far inferior, ha 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 ha. Although it was already late at night, Miss Kanagawa's room was still filled with a joyous atmosphere, mixed with a certain someone's shameful screams and so on. Although he didn't know what happened, Dancing Costume definitely didn't send the text message in the end. Otherwise, Ryudo wouldn't have come to school so listlessly the next morning like a rooster that had lost a fight. Disgusting, Colored Glaze actually thinks I'm disgusting. It's over this time, her favorability towards me will definitely plummet. Unlike last night, Ryudo now looked quite dispirited. His hair had returned to its previous poorly dyed style, and his makeup was nowhere to be seen. He was once again wearing that loose-fitting school uniform. To put it simply, the elegant young master from last night, had completely disappeared, and the vicious little ruffian from before had returned to his daily routine. Originally, Ryudo had intended to continue last night's style. After all, everyone wanted to be praised by others, and being praised by a group of people for being handsome was definitely better than being called a ruffian by a group of people. But since Colored Glaze didn't like it, he could only return to his original style, and not do anything else. Just as Ryudo was walking towards the school gate in a dispirited manner, Colored Glaze and dancing costumes figures appeared not too far away. "Hey, good morning." Because he was scolded last night, Ryudo was somewhat timid as he greeted the Mississippi. "Oh, you finally decided not to play a role that doesn't suit you." Colored Glaze revealed a relaxed smile when she saw Ryudo's familiar appearance, and laughed at his misfortune. "Don't scold me, I know that look is stupid, okay? That's right, you are you, there's no need to do anything else, isn't it better to stay the same?" Colored Glaze took 2 steps forward, reached out and straightened the crooked tie on Ryudo's neck, and patted it with satisfaction. "That's it, see you at noon, bye-bye." After finishing this unusually intimate action, Colored Glaze smiled and waved at the surprised Ryudo, turned around and walked towards the school with dancing costume. "What happened? Miss Colored Glaze seems to be in a good mood today. Isn't she mad at me? And her favorability doesn't seem to have dropped. I don't understand." Looking at the girl's back as she left, Long Do scratched his head in confusion. He had no idea what was going on. He was like a dumb goose that was favored by a goddess but didn't know it. Chapter 179. For a young girl, helping a boy tidy up his tie was undoubtedly a very intimate action. After all, in the eyes of most people, this action was done by the wife for the husband. If it was just an ordinary student, it would not be done at all. What's more, if the girl had a sweet smile on her face when she was helping the boy tidy up his tie, then it was even more obvious that the girl had fallen into a whirlpool of love at a glance. For Dory No. 1 High School, which emphasized on learning, although male and female relationships were strictly prohibited, there were still some couples who secretly played tricks on each other. No matter what, 16-years-old young people were at the age where they were strongly curious about the opposite sex. It was normal for them to have feelings for each other. This was human nature. However, no matter how normal it was, the fact that Miss Colored Glaze was tidying up a boy's tie at the school gate, with a sweet smile on her face and eyes full of love, was like a bolt from the blue. The sound of a pair of underwear shattering countless people's glasses, and also shook the No. 1 High School's BBS. No one knew if it was a good thing or a bad thing. But this morning, Colored Glaze's action of tidying up Ryudo's tie at the school gate happened to be recorded by an expert from the photography department. Under the camera of this student with the online name, successor of teacher Guanxi, Ryudo and Colored Glaze were standing in front of the school gate. The former stood still while the latter leaned forward slightly and reached out to help the former straighten his collar. The resolution of this photo was high enough to be magnified to the point where every detail of the two's faces could be seen clearly. Ryudo's face had a look of disbelief, while Colored Glaze had a smile of a girl in love. Once this photo was published, it immediately became the most familiar photo in the entire Dory No. 1 High School. In just a short morning, it also set off a frenzy of discussion on the school forum. Thousands of posts related to this matter appeared in just a short morning, and the post that was pushed to the top was a new voting post. The total number of votes was quite astonishing. Perhaps it was a coincidence. The last post that caused such a reaction was, "What do you think is the relationship between Yunyan and that person?" This time, the title of the voting post was, "What kind of punishment do you think Ryudo Kiryu should receive?" After an entire morning, the voting results for this post were as follows. There were 276,829,210 votes for hang. The number of votes for death by dismemberment was 3,686,100,021. The number of votes for just kill him first was uncountable. It had exceeded the upper limit. Compared to the last time when Ryudo and Yunyan walked side by side through the school gate, the tie incident at the gate was obviously more shocking. Almost all the students of Dori know. One high school had stopped attending classes. They were crazily using their phones to read, post, and flame Ryudo in the classroom. In fact, when the teacher stood on the podium and looked around, all he could see was the clattering of phones. In the end, the teacher stopped attending classes. He turned on the projector and played an educational video. He also picked up his phone and joined the battle against the great villain Ryudo Kiryu. That's right, a great villain. He really was a great villain. Compared to the last time when Yunyan walked into the school with that scumbag, this incident was obviously much more serious. After all, everyone knew that Yunyan was kind and amiable. It wasn't too hard to imagine that she would suddenly become merciful and willingly walk into the school with Ryudo. Although the probability was low, it didn't mean that it was impossible. But who was Kanzaki-colored glaze? This second-year school beauty wasn't an amiable goddess like Yunyan. Instead, she was a well-known cold-faced lady. She was like a snow lotus on a tall mountain. She could be admired from afar, but couldn't be touched. Because colored glaze's aura was too strong, the difference between her and a normal high school student was too great. It was to the point that no boy dared to confess to her. At most, they only dared to take her picture and worship her like a god. But how did this iceberg snow lotus end up with Tong Sheng Longdo, that super invincible scoundrel? And she was even helping him fix his tie at the school gate? And she was smiling like a girl in love? Impossible. Definitely impossible. How could Kanzaki Ruri possibly like that damn hooligan? She must have been drugged, or poisoned, or under some sort of spell. Ryudo Kiryu must have used some despicable method to change the lady's mind. Or he must have cooked rice for her, cooked rice again, 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 cooked rice for the lady until she became stupid. The fall of the lady in yellow hair. Many people were already guessing on the forum how colored glaze was trained by Ryudo, how she lost herself, and how she became a doll in the end. It was obvious what kind of things were in the minds of the students in this school. They must have watched a lot of movies that required 2 or 3 people to act out. As more and more people joined in on this topic, the smell of gunpowder on First High's BBS became more and more intense. Finally, a post titled First High Students Call, Work Together, Kill Ryudo Kiryu, was pushed to the front page, and it received thousands of responses within 10 minutes. The Karate Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Kendo Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Judo Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Boxing Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Wrestling Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Rugby Club is here to participate in the crusade. The Shujinshi Club is here to participate in the crusade. Under this post calling for a concerted crusade against Ryudo, almost all the sports clubs in the school participated in it. Although there were some strange clubs that participated, most of them were martial arts clubs. Although Dori No. 1 High School was a school for students, the strength of the clubs in it was also quite strong. For example, the Karate Club and the Judo Club often won the national high school competition. As soon as the post came out, almost all the departments were ready to participate in this crusade. They vowed that they would never allow Long Do to be so arrogant as to harm the school beauties. They vowed to fight this extreme hooligan to the end. However, after seeing the post on First High's BBS, Ryudo, who was eating in the garden during lunch break, couldn't help but laugh. Puffed. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. These guys are too funny. Although there were hundreds of department members who signed up, Ryudo's laughter was still very rampant, as if he didn't put the hundreds of martial arts students in his eyes. Of course, this was indeed the case. The so-called martial arts students in high school, to put it bluntly, was a group of karate, judo, and boxing enthusiasts. They were far from the level of professionals. The current Ryudo was someone who fought his way out of being hunted by the entire underground world. For these martial arts students in high school, even if there were hundreds of them, they would only end up with corpses everywhere. Ants were ants, lions were lions. If there were tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of ants, it might be possible to kill a lion, but a few hundred ants, it wouldn't even be enough to fill the gap between a lion's teeth. Colored Glaze, who was sitting opposite him eating, naturally understood this principle, so she wasn't worried about Ryudo at all. Instead, she was worried about the group of idiots who were prepared to cause trouble, worried that too many of them would die. Those idiots. I was just in the mood to help Ryudo tidy up his tie. Was there a need to make such a big fuss? However, he had always been stirring up public anger. But even so, Colored Glaze still said to Ryudo next to her, "They're just a group of kids, it's fine if they make a fuss. You're not really going to argue with them, are you?" "I don't plan to argue. But the problem is that they don't want to let me go." "Then I'll go talk to them. It won't be good for anyone if a fight really breaks out." "Please don't, this is my business, how can I let you deal with it? You're not my wife for the time being." You don't have to say the last sentence. What do you plan to do now? Fighting in school is definitely not allowed. The impact will be very bad. Of course I won't fight with them. In fact, I plan to hold a Dory No. 1 martial arts tournament. In the form of a competition. Wouldn't that be much friendlier? Dory No. 1 martial arts tournament? When they heard the name that sounded like it came out of a comic book, Colored Glaze and Dancing Costume couldn't help but look at each other. However, after listening to Ryudo's explanation, they were even more stunned. The Dory No. 1 martial arts tournament will be held in the school's gymnasium this afternoon. A series of fascinating martial arts tournaments will be held in a friendly, harmonious, and relaxed atmosphere. Tournament Party A, Ryudo Kiryu. Tournament Party B, all the registered participants. The rules of the tournament. Party B is free to challenge Party A. There is no limit to the number of participants. Participation method. Participants need to pay a registration fee of 10,000 yuan, and spectators need to pay a viewing fee of 1,000 yuan. When Ryudo finished writing the Dory No. 1 martial arts tournament competition poster, he added a line below. "Come and fight with Ryudo Kiryu happily. I'll be waiting for you." He also drew a cute cartoon figure on it. Because there were too many things to complain about in this tournament, even the king of complaints like Colored Glaze didn't know where to start. "Bro, they're here to seek revenge on you. And you want to collect money? That's too much, isn't it? Do you only care about money?" But no matter what, compared to the crusade organized by the clubs, Ryudo's tournament seemed more harmonious. At least in this kind of competition, they didn't have to worry about those idiots being beaten to a bloody pulp by Ryudo. It was much safer than a big battle royale. Therefore, when the lunch break ended, Ryudo's relaxing extracurricular activities proposal was submitted to the principal's office. Chapter 180. Regarding the chaos that started this morning, the school was also having a headache. After all, judging from the situation of the students, they were all agitated by Tong Sheng Ryudo. It was possible that he would be beaten up by countless righteous people as soon as school was over. In order to prevent the worst from happening, the school even prepared to call the police to escort Ryudo home. Unexpectedly, Longdo actually took the initiative to submit an application form for an after-class activity. Not long after, in the principal's office of the first high school, two figures were facing each other across a desk. Standing on the inner side of the table was the principal, Adolphe Pescarolo, who matched his suit and red wine glass very well. One could tell at a glance that he was an old gentleman. "Toshio, are you serious?" Looking at the application form, the old principal's eyes widened in disbelief. "Of course, don't you know what kind of environment this is? Instead of having a chaotic fight, it's better to let them vent their emotions in an orderly manner." That doesn't sound like something you would say. But holding a martial arts tournament in school is somewhat risky. You mean there's no risk if we let them do whatever they want? Someone will die. When Ryudo said the last 4 words, his tone slightly paused. Obviously, the person he said would die was not himself. Sigh. That's true. The old principal couldn't help but sigh as he looked deeply at Ryudo. Of course, he knew what kind of person Ryudo Kiryu was. And he also knew about the kid's family background. If the students really attacked Ryudo together, he didn't know if there would be any problems, but the students who attacked would definitely be in big trouble. Then we'll hold a competition like this, but I'll have to find a security company to take care of the security. Security company? No need, I'll introduce you to one. I guarantee they'll be strong and cheap. When he heard the old principal say that he wanted to find a security company, Ryudo's eyes suddenly widened as he found another way to make money. For Ryudo, money was something that could never be too much. Moreover, he wouldn't hesitate to make money. Therefore, after Ryudo made a call, the Rulong Security Company rushed to Dori First High School. With the help of this group of veterans, they quickly transformed the basketball court in the middle of the stadium into a shape similar to a ring, and arranged the thousands of seats around it properly. More than 100 bodyguards from the Rulong Security Company were waiting quietly inside and outside the stadium, waiting for the group of saltwater fishes who were coming to pay the money to compete. After connecting with the school's skyline, Ryudo logged into the First High School BBS and used the account he had just applied for to post a post that instantly blew up the entire campus. Title of the post: Hello everyone, I'm Ryudo Kiryu. If you're my brother, come and kill me. I'll be waiting for you at the first martial arts tournament. The content of the post was roughly that the first martial arts tournament had received the school's support and was in full swing preparations. It would be announced to everyone after school in the afternoon and so on. Sure enough, as soon as the post was posted, it was flooded with angry students. King Ryudo Kiryu actually dared to open a first martial arts tournament? And the most annoying thing is that you still want to collect money? We're looking for you to take revenge. You want to earn this little bit of money? That's too disgusting. Although $1,000 to watch the competition and $10,000 to participate in the competition were nothing to the students of this high school, the thought that the money might end up in Longdo's pocket made everyone furious. I want to beat him up. This money will be his medical expenses. No, let's just beat him to death. This money will be his funeral expenses. How much does that bastard look down on people? He actually wants to use this matter to make money. No, I have to call my cousin. He's a professional boxer. He must beat that bastard to death. Suddenly, the students on the forum became even angrier. Some of them even began to contact external aid. In any case, this first martial arts tournament did not say that only students from the school could participate. Just like this, under such a turbulent situation, time slowly passed, and it was after school. Ring, 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 ring. As the school bell rang, almost all the students rushed out of the classroom like the cafeteria was opening for lunch. They all rushed toward the gymnasium. Although everyone was very dissatisfied with the fact that they had to pay to watch this tournament, they still had to watch it. Moreover, although it was said that they had to pay, many people had already discussed it for a while. Everyone would squeeze in and see who could take the money. If I don't pay, what can you do? However, just as everyone arrived at the entrance of the gymnasium, a few brawny men in suits stopped them at the entrance. The spectator fee is 1,000 yuan. Pay up and enter. If you don't, scram. In front of thousands of students, the brawny man in a suit holding a loudspeaker at the entrance said mercilessly, as if he did not treat this group of little guys as human beings at all. Nonsense. This is a member of the Rulong Security Company. He originally came from Extreme Dao. Why would he be afraid of you little guys? Try to squeeze in if you have the ability. How about? Let's pay the money. Anyway, it's not much. Just when the group of people were at a loss at the entrance, someone finally couldn't help but pay the money first and walk in. Then, almost everyone began to line up to pay, and then walked into the gymnasium obediently, not daring to make a fuss. As for the other group of people who signed up for the tournament, after paying 10,000 yuan from another entrance, they directly entered the contestant lounge. They warmed up and exercised inside, ready to go out and teach that bastard a lesson at any time. Wow, is it finally going to start? The contestants in the contestant lounge look so powerful. They can be written into my novel. When more and more people entered the gymnasium, Yunyan, who was sitting in the main spectator stand, couldn't help but clap her hands excitedly. She didn't seem nervous at all. They're just a bunch of idiots. They actually want to make a move on Ryudo. They're simply looking for their own deaths. Dunya, who was also sitting in the main spectator stand, complained with a sour expression. After all, she knew what kind of level Ryudo was at. Even if everyone here worked together, they wouldn't be able to defeat him. Apart from Union and Dunya, there was only a total of 3 seats in the main spectator stand. The last person sitting in the main spectator stand was naturally the female protagonist of this incident, Kanzaki Colored Glaze. The main spectator stand was located in the area closest to the ring. The ordinary spectators could also see the 3 great beauties sitting side by side. It could be said that just seeing this scene alone was worth the ticket price. However, when Dunya and Colored Glaze sat together, the two naturally wouldn't get along well. So Dunya looked at Colored Glaze, who was sitting leisurely, and asked in a sarcastic tone, "Kanzaki-senpai, by the way, what's wrong with you this morning? Why did you do that kind of thing to Ryudo? Look, you've angered everyone." "What kind of thing? Helping him fix his necktie? Actually, that was his strong request. There's no other way. Who told Ryudo to like me so much?" After hearing Dunya's words, Colored Glaze didn't even turn her head and ridiculed her. "You, sneaky cat. Stinky mistress. You actually have the nerve to say such a lie. Watch your words. You didn't admit that you're his fiancé, right? Then what does it matter to you who Ryudo is with? What qualifications do you have to call me a mistress? You. If you're really his fiancé, then watch your fiancé closely. It's best to sleep in the same bed with him at night. But with your figure, Ryudo probably won't be interested." Speaking of this, Colored Glaze looked at Dunya's chest with contempt and couldn't help but sneer disdainfully. Speaking of which, Colored Glaze's chest wasn't very big, but at least compared to Dunya's chest, it was a relatively normal size, so she could still laugh at her. "I'll kill you, bastard sneaky cat. Alright, each of you should stop talking. Please." Suddenly Yunyan, who was sitting between the two, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She blocked Dunya and turned her head to Colored Glaze. While the 3 beauties were fooling around on the main viewing platform, most of the spectators had already arrived. Narukai Otani, who was wearing a fancy suit, held a microphone and walked onto the ring. He came to the middle of the ring and shouted at the top of his lungs, "Everyone, the first martial arts tournament is about to begin. Now, let's welcome the first challenger, the friend of the uncle of the head of the boxing club, J.K. Smith." Under Narukai's enthusiastic introduction, a big black man wearing boxing shorts and bulging muscles, who looked like a professional, walked onto the ring. What the hell is this? Isn't this an active heavyweight boxer? When they saw J.K. Smith, most of the audience was shocked, but a few people recognized his identity. Isn't this a fight between students? Why is the first person to fight Ryudo a professional boxer? What the hell is the friend of the head of the boxing club? At the same time, the head of the boxing club, Kamita, who was watching the live broadcast in the contestant lounge, suddenly sneered. He, this is called all's fair in war. You're so sneaky, you actually called for outside help. And this level of outside help, won't that kid be beaten to death? That's right, if you find someone to beat him to the ground, what are we fighting for? We've already spent the money, you should let us go up and beat him up. For a moment, the other people in the players' lounge also laughed loudly as they watched the live broadcast. It was as if they could see Long Do being beaten to a pulp by this professional heavyweight boxer. Chapter 181. Indeed, everyone knew that Ryudo Kiryu was the extreme Dao Young master, so he must be very good at fighting. Not many ordinary high school students would be able to exchange blows with him. Everyone knew that. But what did it mean to be an active heavyweight boxer? Even if he stood there and let Ryudo hit him, a teenager would not be able to hurt him. The two of them were not on the same level at all. No, this match should not be able to continue, right? The host will definitely call for a stop. Seeing J.K. Smith enter the ring, the audience below the stage stared at the gorgeously dressed Narukai Otani. They all thought that he would definitely stop the match. who knew that Narukai did not even look at the heavyweight boxer. Instead, he waved his hand to the side and shouted excitedly, "Next, let's welcome the champion of the Kyoto First Martial Arts Tournament, Eternal God Ryuto Kiryu. Enter the stage." Clatter, 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 clatter. Clap, 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 clap. For a moment, a tsunami of applause and cheers filled the entire stadium. If one looked closely, this time the cheers and applause were not from ordinary students, but the security personnel of the Rulong Security Company. Although there were only a few hundred people, their momentum, voice, and applause seemed to be louder and more energetic than the thousands of audience here. It was a strong shock. But for the ordinary audience, it was not the momentum that shocked them, but, is Ryuto really going to fight? They watched as Long Do, who was wearing an ordinary school uniform, walked towards J.K. Smith in the ring without any regard for his family. Most of the people in the audience were extremely surprised. After all, no one dared to believe that Ryuto Kiryu did not have any opinions about his opponent. What's going on? Is he looking for death? This match is obviously not right. Why won't he stop it? At this time, most of the audience could not help but think so. Generally speaking, the Kyoto First Martial Arts Tournament should be limited to the entire school, right? But the boxing department invited an active heavyweight boxer to be their external aide. How could this be? It felt like a certain school had organized a football match, and someone had invited the Brazilian team to play on their behalf. What was the point of competing? However, most people's surprised gazes did not affect Ryuto at all. He leisurely walked up to J.K. Smith. When the two of them stood close to each other, the difference in physique was even more obvious. J.K. Smith was a heavyweight boxer with a height of 1.98 meters and a weight of nearly 100 kilograms. In comparison, the 16-year-old Ryuto Kiryu was not short, but his overall figure was like a child compared to J.K. Smith. An adult beating a child. At least on the surface, this was the feeling that both sides gave off. Was it him? This little brat actually needs me to take action. This money is really easy to earn. Looking at the high school kid standing in front of him, J.K. Smith couldn't help but grin, revealing his neat white teeth. At this moment, Narukai raised his hand and shouted, "The contestants are ready. The competition begins." Was it really going to start? Ryuto Kiryu was really going to fight that heavyweight boxer. The moment the competition began, J.K. Smith began to shake his body, as if he was in a boxing match. He walked towards Ryuto with a mesmerizing smile on his face, and at the same time made provocative gestures with both hands. Not only that, he also said in perfect English, "Stinky brat, if you get out of the ring now, I'll let you live. How about it? Ha ha ha." And Ryuto did not react to this provocative words. Of course, the biggest reason was that he did not understand English. What are you blabbering on about, idiot? Do I even understand? Because he did not understand, Ryuto made an international gesture of contempt. He raised one hand, pointed his middle finger at J.K. Smith. "This stinky brat is looking for death. Watch me beat his brains out." Seeing that Ryuto still dared to be arrogant in front of him, J.K. Smith took a step forward. A right straight punch covered in anger fiercely hit Ryuto's head. As a heavyweight professional boxer, J.K. Smith naturally wore boxing gloves on the stage. The fist with the boxing gloves was like lightning, and it was like a small mountain smashing towards the opponent's head. A punch from a heavyweight boxer was enough to kill a person if it hit the head. It was already at the level of a lethal weapon. However, before the audience could exclaim in surprise, Ryuto made his move first. His gaze sharpened, and his right elbow quickly swung out, hitting the center of J.K. Smith's fist. Kacha! The moment the two collided, J.K. Smith heard a familiar sound of bones exploding. At the same time, the boxing gloves on his hand, along with the 5 fingers inside, burst open. There was a saying in the ancient martial arts world, "It's better to take 10 punches than 1 elbow." With Ryuto's current LV4 physique, and his proficiency in ancient Bajikwan, his elbow actually broke J.K. Smith's fist on the spot. Before the intense pain could reach his brain, another hand like an iron clamp had already grabbed this blockhead's neck and picked him up like picking up a rag from the ground. The next moment, Ryuto twisted his body, clasped J.K. Smith's neck, and threw him out of the ring not far away. His 198-meter-tall body, which weighed close to 100 kilograms, flew across the sky. Like a dummy that was thrown out, it flew a distance of 4 to 5 meters, and with a plop, it landed outside the center ring of the stadium. When J.K. Smith fell to the ground, this heavyweight boxer had already lost consciousness and fainted with white foam coming out of his mouth. That was not the worst part. Anyone with a little bit of medical knowledge would know that his boxing career had come to an end when they saw this guy's fist, which was twisted into a weird shape with his gloves. Seeing the first challenger fly down in the blink of an eye, the entire stadium became extremely quiet, as if they had arrived at a funeral house. How is this possible? This is an active heavyweight boxer. How could he be defeated in an instant? Although everyone knew that Ryuto was very fierce in fighting, they did not expect him to be fierce to this extent. What kind of monster is he to defeat a professional heavyweight boxer at the age of a high school student? However, as the host, Narukai did not react to this shocking scene, but continued to shout. The first challenger has been declared defeated. Next, let us welcome the second challenger, the head of the boxing department, Kamita Coward. What? It's my turn? It's my turn? When he heard the host's words, the head of the boxing department, who was watching in the resting area, suddenly shuddered. More than 10 seconds ago, he had proudly said, "I originally wanted to be the first one to fight, but he's a student of our school after all. I don't feel good hitting him, so I asked J.K. Smith to help me punish him." But when he realized that he was really going to fight, Kamita Coward's legs started to tremble violently. A member of the boxing department beside him also trembled and came to his side and said with a bitter smile, "Head, it's your turn. Do your best." "Do my best. Do my best. You said it so easily. Go fight that monster yourself, bastard." After trembling for a second, Kamita Coward said to the staff not far away, "Sorry, my stomach. My stomach doesn't feel well. I can't fight today. I want to forfeit." The staff looked at him and said coldly, "It's your choice to forfeit. Since that's the case, the third challenger, the head of the karate department, Kota Inuya, will fight." This my stomach also hurts. I want to forfeit too." When he heard his name being called, the head of the karate department, Kota Inuya, also held his stomach and made a "my stomach hurts. It hurts. Look." It was obvious that the disease here had already shown signs of being transmitted from person to person. After Kamita Coward and Kota Inu barking took the lead, the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th and so on, all of the other challengers also refused to fight, citing various illnesses as reasons. There were many symptoms, not only stomach pain, but also cold, fever, headache, brain fever, bone fracture, cancer, AIDS, paranoia and so on. It gave people the feeling that this wasn't a resting area, but a hospital's intensive care unit. Good Lord, there aren't many healthy people in the Dori First High School, right? Whoever's name is called will get sick. Are you holding a ward meeting here? After calling out the names in the contestant resting area, the staff member in charge of the roll call was speechless. He could only say, "Who wants to go on stage? Stand up now, okay? Don't waste any more time." Suddenly, all the young students in the resting area looked at each other, but no one dared to stand up. But this was to be expected. The current heavyweight boxer was already crippled, so it would be strange if these ordinary high school students dared to fight. No one wanted to live with their left hand for the rest of their life. So after about 10 minutes of stalemate, the host on the stage finally announced that the Dori First Martial Arts Tournament had come to an end. What the hell? That's it. No one dared to fight anymore. When the staff of the Rulong Security Company started to stop the spectators from leaving, there were still many students who had just paid and walked in. 1,000 yuan was completely wasted, but there was nothing they could do. After all, those who saw the match between Ryuto and J.K. Smith knew that this guy was not a normal person. He was more like an alien monster, the strongest and evilest high school student in history. After today's tournament, Ryuto not only received tens of millions of yuan, but also a very cool title. Moreover, The Igao BBS forum that was originally full of people immediately quieted down. Other than some people who dared to secretly curse Ryudo, no one dared to say anything stupid like a collective crusade. Was it not embarrassing enough? However, for the sake of safety, Rulong Security Company forbade the recording of this martial arts tournament. However, this time, the legend quickly spread through word of mouth. Among the people who were shocked by Ryudo's extraordinary skills and terrifying appearance, there were the other 4 extreme dojo in the Tokyo area. Therefore, that night, an invitation letter from another huge extreme dojo organization, the White Tiger Gang, was sent to Ryudo. Chapter 182. Speaking of the extreme Dao organizations, in the Tokyo area, the Ryukyu group was not the only one. Although the Dragon group founded by Tongshun Kazuma was a rather powerful extreme Dao group, there were also 4 other extreme Dao groups that were not inferior to the Dragon group in all aspects. Psychedelic Saburo was headquartered in the Shibuya area. They mainly operated nightclubs and video cassettes. Big Dipper Alliance was headquartered in the Senma area. They mainly sold guns, ammunition, and all kinds of dangerous weapons. Black Snake Alliance was headquartered in the Shinjuku area. They mainly sold all kinds of anesthetics and illegal drugs. White Tiger Gang was also headquartered in the port area. They mainly sold money and collected protection fees. They were all powerful gangs in the Tokyo area. They all had their own strengths. They didn't have too many conflicts in their business. Therefore, they could coexist harmoniously. However, when Ryudo received the invitation from the White Tiger Gang's president, Karakawa Kaori, he looked at the letter in his hand and was confused. Tonight, your humble servant will be hosting a banquet in room 408 of the Star Python Apartments. I hope that your Highness Tongshun Ryudo can come and have a drink with you. What the hell is this? After reading the letter from the White Tiger Gang's president, Ryudo handed it to Advisor Fujiki. Advisor Fujiki, who had been in this industry for his whole life, was more familiar with the extreme Dao. Ryudo didn't even know what kind of bird the White Tiger Gang was. Advisor Fujiki looked at the letter carefully and frowned. The White Tiger Gang's president has the same title as our team leader. He shouldn't have any bad ideas. It's just that the place of the banquet is a bit. Star Python Apartments? Who would treat people to a meal in an apartment? If not, it would be a banquet in a hotel. How shabby. No. Young master, this Star Python apartment isn't an ordinary apartment. I forgot to tell you this. Immediately, Consultant Fujiki scratched his head and explained the situation of this Star Python apartment, one by one. This was because Kazuma and Fujiki didn't want Ryudo to enter this extreme Dao world. He had never told Ryudo a lot of things related to the gangs. This included this Star Python apartment and related matters. If one had to describe it in the simplest terms, this apartment would be a typical extreme Dao apartment. Everyone who lived here was a member of extreme Dao. Because of the uniqueness of this apartment, it had been used as a meeting place for extreme Dao cultivators since a long time ago. If there were any disputes between the two gangs, or if there was something that needed to be discussed, they would come to this Star Python apartment. Every gang also had their own rooms here. The management of this apartment was also managed and maintained by members from various gangs. Naturally, the Rulong Group, as a member of the Tokyo Okichi organization, also had its own room in the Star Python apartment, as well as its own management. I see, there's such a special place in Tokyo. After hearing Fujiki's explanation, Ryudo felt like he had seen a new world. That's right. The reason why Akuragawa invited you to the banquet is because he has something to discuss. You're not the only one that he invited. Oh, the other extreme Dao organizations are also invited? As far as I know, Psychedelic Saburo, Big Dipper Alliance, and Black Snake Alliance, these 3 large extreme Dao organizations in Tokyo, all received similar letters today. In other words, the president of the White Tiger Gang didn't just invite Ryudo, but also the other 4 extreme Dao leaders in Tokyo. The president of the White Tiger Gang, the hero Akuragawa. I think I've heard of his name before. He seems to be a person that is respected by his brothers? Of course, If our leader Kazuma isn't here, he would be the #1 hero in Tokyo. He's a very simple and loyal extreme Dao. Speaking until here, Fujiki handed over the information he had on Akuragawa. Ryudo took the information and looked at it. This guy was already more than 70 years old. He was like a living fossil in extreme Dao. Since the 60s and 70s, Akuragawa started to make a living at the docks, helping the Americans to move goods. At that time, due to the tension between labor and management, it was difficult to transport goods. Japanese gangsters took the opportunity to fill the gap and helped the Americans to transport goods. At the same time, the government also used extreme Dao to suppress dissidents, which gave extreme Dao organizations the best soil to take root. After many years of development, the group of extreme Dao people formed many famous extreme Dao organizations, including the hero Akuragawa. With his seniority in extreme Dao, Akuragawa's White Tiger Gang became more and more prosperous. However, they usually followed the rules and never bullied the weak. They also didn't involve themselves in some terrible industries. It could be said that they had their own principles. Therefore, it proved that the president of the White Tiger Gang was respected by all parties in the underworld. It could be said that hundreds of people responded to his call. However, after Ryudo finished reading the information, he said with disdain, "TSK, isn't he just a lackey of the government? How shameless of him to call himself a hero. It can't be helped. Extreme Dao in that era was like that." However, Akuragawa didn't get involved with the government anymore. Instead, he focused on helping the weak. Is it true? I feel like there's something wrong with this old man. Although Fujiki also respected the president of the White Tiger Gang, Ryudo looked at the information in his hand and felt that something was wrong. He knew that the earliest extreme Dao was actually a lackey of the politicians. They helped the politicians do things that were inconvenient on the surface. Therefore, they were called the politician's chamber pot. Although there were also extreme Dao like Ikima, who didn't rely on the politicians and were upright people, they were relatively few after all. Most of the extreme Dao were always inseparable from the game of money and power. What made Ryudo puzzled was why the White Tiger Gang invited him to a banquet at this time. Just yesterday, the Great Search for Young Criminals had just been launched in Tokyo, which made most of the ghetto and similar organizations suffer greatly. Today, the White Tiger Gang sent someone to invite Ryudo. This made people feel that a storm was coming. In fact, it was indeed the case. The current situation was indeed a storm. When Ryudo decided to see what the president of the Akuragawa was doing, a meeting in the car also began. Around 6 o'clock in the afternoon, the hero Akuragawa came alone to a small shopping mall that looked inconspicuous. He was an old man wearing an old striped suit and a hat. He looked a little thin. Even from afar, one could feel the hardcore aura of the Showa era. After walking around the mall a few times, the old president passed by a boutique and left from the back door of the shop without saying a word. He followed a small path and walked directly into a deep alley. In the deepest part of the alley, there was a black car that looked inconspicuous. Before the old president walked in, the back door of the car opened by itself and welcomed him in. The car started, and began to drive around the neighborhood. The driving speed wasn't too fast, just enough for the two people sitting in the back seat to talk easily. In addition to the president of the Akuragawa, who just got in the car, there was also a woman in a black kimono sitting in the back. Her face was covered with a black veil. At first glance, her face couldn't be seen clearly, but from her figure, she should be very young. After the car drove away, the woman asked faintly, "President Akuragawa, how have you been?" Thanks to you, it's not bad." As the president of the Akuragawa answered, he lowered his head slightly and put on a very humble appearance. It was clear that he was at an absolute disadvantage in front of this woman. This woman's identity was obvious. "The invitations that I asked you to send out have been sent out, right? The other 4 have received them and have replied that they are willing to come." "Very good." The woman nodded and said with a cold smile, "As long as the Hero Alliance is 10% successful, the entire Tokyo's extreme Dao will be under your control, President Akuragawa." "I wouldn't dare. It should be under your control. Speaking to this point, the president of the Acaragua hurriedly lowered his head, as if he felt that this woman was very terrifying. It was hard to imagine that an old man who was known as a hero in the extreme Tao would bow to such a young woman. None of the members of the White Tiger gang had seen the president of the Acaragua like this before, not even his own son. After the two of them talked about some more details, the president of the Acaragua couldn't help but ask, You asked me to help you find the criminals who robbed and beat up your nephew, but we still haven't found them. What do you think? That doesn't matter. If we can find them, then we'll find them. If we can't, then so be it. It's not that important anyway. After all, the Tokyo Extreme Tao have been stirred up. That's the key. I see. In that case, they'll be more inclined to agree to our alliance. My lord, you're truly farsighted. There's no need to flatter me. The key is to do your job well. Go. Yes. After the woman said this, the car stopped. The president of the Acaragua hurriedly got off, and hurriedly rushed off into the distance. He was like an old dog that had been ordered by its owner to hunt. Looking at his back, the woman in the car smiled happily. Acaragua, after the Extreme Tao Alliance is established, you'll be of little use to us. You want to change your identity after everything is over, and take your family to American to retire? Heh, you're dreaming. You want to clear your name after doing so many good deeds? When the time comes, your entire family will be fed to the fishes in the Tokyo Bay's river. Idiot. After leaving behind a cold gaze, the black car slowly drove away from this area, as if it had never appeared. Chapter 183. That night, on a relatively remote street in Tokyo, two patrol officers in police uniforms were patrolling the street as usual. However, compared to these two weak patrolmen, the group of people walking nearby, who were either dressed in black, tight-fitting clothes, or dressed sloppily, were much more imposing. Wow, if you look carefully, there are a lot of ghetto on this street. After walking for a while, the young patrol officer on the left couldn't help but say so. This street is an area sandwiched between several ghetto disaster areas. People from various gangs will appear here. It can be said to be Ghetto Street, but the task of patrolling here is quite easy. The patrol officer on the right, who looked older, shook his head and said in a relaxed tone, Easy. Why is it easy? Because there is an unspoken rule on this street. Gangs can't make trouble here. Even if there is a dispute, they can only use their fists, and can't use any weapons. Otherwise, they will be attacked by the ghetto world. Oh, I see. They have such a rule. There is an apartment over there. It looks quite harmonious. As they walked, the young patrol officer looked at the seemingly ordinary apartment in the middle of the street, and couldn't help but reach out and point there. It was a 20-story, ordinary-looking residential apartment. Because it was already night-time, there were sparkling lights all over the place. Idiot! Don't point your finger. But at this moment, the older patrol officer reached out and pressed down the young man's hand, hurriedly pressing him down. What's wrong? That is the Star Python apartment. It is a place bought and managed by many ghetto leaders in Tokyo. All ghetto members live there. It is a completely lawless area. You can't just point at it. When the Star Python apartment was mentioned, a drop of cold sweat fell from the old patrol officer's forehead. Anyone who had stayed on this street would know how terrifying the Star Python apartment was. There were more than 4 digits of ghetto members living in this apartment all year round. They were from the Rulon Group, White Tiger Gang, Psychedelic Saburo, Big Dipper Alliance, and Black Snake Alliance. Therefore, it was not as simple as a mix of crooks and honest folk. It was a complete underground world. The patrolmen working in the surrounding area all knew that no matter what happened, they should never enter the Star Python apartment. This was because once they entered, there was no guarantee that they would be able to walk out alive. What a terrifying place. Just as the young patrolman who had just been transferred here was trembling as he looked at the Star Python apartment, the old patrolman's eyes widened slightly as he looked at the vehicles near the apartment. Was it my imagination? Why do I feel like there are a lot of cars around the apartment today? According to the experience of the old patrol officer, there shouldn't be so many cars parked near the apartment every day. But today, it was already full. However, this was to be expected. After all, in room 408 of the Star Python apartment, which was also the private room of the White Tiger Gang's president, Akane Arakawa, a grand banquet of the Extreme Path world was slowly unfolding. As the host of tonight's banquet, Karakawa Chinori had already changed into a majestic kimono and was waiting in the room. The interior of the room was very simple. Other than a round table and 6 seats in the middle, there were basically no decorations. The decoration of such a spacious room was mainly to prevent certain people from installing some bugs or pinhole cameras in the room. After all, what was about to happen here was not a conversation that could be seen in the light of day. Creak. As the room door was forcefully pushed open, a pair of very hip-hop-looking young brothers walked in. Of the 2 men, one was tall and fat, the other was short and thin. Both of them wore sunglasses, very trendy oversized t-shirts and shorts, and their hair was combed into a very stylish hairstyle. At first glance, they looked like hip-hop people. When the 2 young men walked into the room, Karakawa Chinori smiled and greeted, "Brother Sanlang, long time no see." "That's for sure. At the very least, it'll take half a year." "President Karakawa, you're old and healthy. You're not poked by needles, pfft." Compared to Karakawa Chinori's formal greeting, the Sanlang brothers replied with a very messy rap-style speech. However, the 2 brothers' rap did not rhyme at all, and it sounded very bad. It felt like there was something wrong with their heads. In fact, that was indeed the case. As the bosses of the extreme gang Psychedelic Sanlang, that mainly sold anesthetics, the 2 brothers' hobby was to eat all kinds of trendy pills. It was impossible to say that there was nothing wrong with their heads. After the 2 bosses of Psychedelic Sanlang took their seats, a very mature and beautiful woman in an evening gown walked in right after. This woman looked about 30 years old, which was the age to fully emit the charm of a woman. Coupled with her decent evening gown and obviously well-groomed appearance, she looked as eye-catching as a celebrity or model. If there was no special introduction, perhaps no one would have thought that such a beautiful woman was the leader of the Triad Syndicate that mainly operated nightclubs and sold strange videotapes, Tessa. Tessa's facial features were clearly different from East Asians. She had a strong South Asian style. She should be a woman from Thailand. Probably a woman. After coming in, Tessa smiled and greeted with a hoarse voice, "President Karakawa, it's great to see that you're still so healthy." "Thank you, Miss Tessa, please sit." After nodding and inviting Miss Tessa to sit in another seat, the 4th member of the meeting finally arrived. Different from the previous 3, the 4th middle-aged man, who came and did not greet anyone in the room. Instead, he looked at the people around the table, nodded slightly, and walked to his seat. He looked about 40 years old, and his determined face was full of hardships. He gave people the feeling that he had been through a lot. One look, and you could tell that he was a very reliable man. Of course, whether or not this man named Kai Yang and his Big Dipper alliance were reliable depended on whether or not the money you prepared was enough. If you have enough money, this man from a neighboring country will sell you all the guns and equipment he collected from all over the world. Otherwise, get out of my sight. At this moment, the leaders of the 4 Extreme Path organizations had gathered together. White Tiger Society, Psychedelic Saburo, Triad Syndicate, and Big Dipper Alliance. These 4 extreme dojos were all veterans in the Tokyo area. They were also big shots in the underground society, who could cause an earthquake with a single move. But after waiting for a while, the last participant still hadn't arrived, which made the Saburo brothers a little unhappy. There's still one person left. That kid is the youngest, so he should be the first to arrive. Courtesy no. Maybe he's scared and doesn't dare to come. After all, he's just a little brat. While waiting, the Sanlang brothers began to mock the last participant one after another. From their tone and words, it was clear that the 2 brothers didn't think highly of the young master of the Rulon group, Ryuto Kiryu. "Don't say that." Hearing that, Tessa smiled and said, "Previously, he managed to escape from being hunted down by the entire underground world. Furthermore, You all know that he easily defeated a heavyweight boxer yesterday. He's not as simple as an ordinary kid. Naturally, the four extreme grade leaders knew the details of Tong Shenglongdo's deeds. Not long ago, during the night of the pursuit, some of their subordinates also participated in the pursuit of Ryudo and Dunya. After all, it was a huge sum of 1 billion. Who wouldn't want to make money? From the previous night of the pursuit, Ryudo Kiryu was indeed very terrifying. At the age of 16, he was able to lead a little girl and kill hundreds of hunters of the underground world. This wasn't just a rumor of bravery that was spread around on the streets. It was a fact. Therefore, very few people dared to look down on Ryudo. He really wasn't a normal 16-year-old brat. But even so, the Saburo brothers still snorted and said, "He's really good at fighting, but unfortunately, he doesn't know the rules. In the underworld, fighting isn't enough." That's right. As a junior, he actually dared to be late. He has no respect for us seniors. F***ck. Creak. But just as the Saburo brothers were mercilessly mocking and cursing Ryudo, the door of the room was finally opened again. Under everyone's different gazes, Ryudo, who was wearing a very handsome and dignified suit, slowly walked toward the round table. Today's Ryudo was obviously different from usual. Because he was going to attend a formal occasion, he wore a three-piece business suit made of silk and satin. Compared to wool, silk and satin were more noble and luxurious. Together with the wide collar and cross tie, it could create a three-dimensional feeling of facial features, making him look more robust and stable. With this kind of dressing and his strong aura, Ryudo didn't look like a 16-year-old high school student at all. He even looked like a super big boss that could suppress the four extreme bosses. This is Ryudo Kiryu? Is he really only 16 years old? After feeling the terrifying aura of this young man, the rest of the people were shocked by him. But Saburo couldn't help but mutter, "TSK, what's with the pretense?" After hearing Saburo's words, Ryudo, who was walking toward the chair, immediately turned around and came in front of the extreme boss, who was wearing a hip-hop outfit. In the room where these extreme bosses were gathered, Ryudo looked at Saburo, who was sitting on the chair with a condescending gaze, as if he was looking at trash. At the same time, he asked indifferently, "What did you say just now?" Chapter 184. In fact, Saburo was just casually saying that. He didn't think that Ryudo would actually directly look for him. And from this guy's expression and tone, this young master of the Rulon group seems to be looking for trouble? For a moment, the originally silent atmosphere in the room became even more austere. It was as if even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard clearly. Saburo was stared at by Ryudo's sharp eyes, and a drop of cold sweat fell from his forehead. He had to admit that this guy dressed like a godfather standing in front of him and looking at him with contempt. This feeling was quite intimidating, especially when he knew that Ryudo Kiryu was a monster with at least hundreds of lives in his hands. This pressure was even more exaggerated. It was simply enough to make people pee their pants. Seeing that Saburo didn't dare to reply, Ryudo stretched out his hand and knocked on the table in front of him. He continued to ask, "I seem to have heard you say something about me. I didn't hear it clearly. Try saying it again." Although he was momentarily intimidated by Ryudo's imposing manner, Saburo was still the leader of the extreme Tao organization, Psychedelic Saburo. He had more than 1,000 brothers under him. Naturally, he couldn't continue to be bullied like this. So he stood up and said with a fierce tone, "Stinky brat, you're looking for trouble, right? Who's the one looking for trouble, don't you know? Don't look for trouble first, and then pretend to be innocent. You're late, so what if we say a few words to you?" Hearing this, Ryudo sneered, then stretched out his hand and patted his suit, mocking, "Is this a kindergarten? You like to be punctual? Then if you're here on time, should I give you a little red flower as a reward? If you hurt your brain from taking drugs, go get it treated. Soaking in these things every day won't end well. Sooner or later, you'll die from eating stinky devil. You're King tired of living." When Fatty Subaru heard that it was not a sarcastic remark, But an insult directed at his brother's nose, he, who had never been ridiculed like this, suddenly jumped up from his seat. Unlike Pang Sanlang, although Pang Sanlang looked fat, his body was very strong. It could even be said that he was strong to the point of being unnatural. In Psychedelic Saburo, Skinny Saburo was in charge of making all kinds of plans and managing the gang. He was the leader of the Brain faction. Fat Saburo was in charge of killing the enemy. He was the leader of the Fighting faction. This combination of fat and thin was one of the main reasons why the organization had developed to its current state. At this moment, Pang Sanlang was like a leopard hunting its prey as he pounced towards Ryudo, who was not far away. His palm suddenly grabbed the little bastard's head. His widely open palm was like a huge fan, almost able to wrap an adult's head within it. Then with just a little bit of force he could crush the skull. Of course, Pang Sanlang's strength was not completely from his innate strength and training. It was also due to the effects of many forbidden drugs. Psychedelic Saburo was in the business of selling drugs. Naturally, he had the means to buy many high-grade steroid drugs and forbidden drugs that could release the human body's limits. Although the side effects of these drugs were huge, Pang Sanlang, who lived on the edge of a knife, naturally did not care about these small matters. Instead, he usually ate all kinds of forbidden drugs as if they were jelly beans. The result of taking medicine like this was that Pang Sanlang's physique, which was already different from ordinary people, became even stronger. He was as strong as an ox, and he once tried to stand after being shot by a pistol 7 or 8 times. He was even able to rush over and crush the gunman's skull. But no matter what, the fact that Do Long and Subaru Long had suddenly started fighting was completely out of line for President Arakawa, who had called for this meeting. Wait, you guys. Thus, Arakawa hurriedly stood up and wanted to stop the two, but it was all too late. Ryudo, who was attacked, flashed with an even faster speed. In the next moment, his figure appeared 2 meters high in the air. Immediately after, his left hand formed a claw and accurately landed on Pang Sanlang's hand. This scene, at first glance, looked like an eagle hunting its prey, but also like a fierce tiger brandishing its claws. In short, the two people's hands tightly clasped together with 5 fingers. This little bastard's speed is so fast. After Ryudo closed in on him, Pang Sanlang was shocked by his lightning-like movements. But he immediately showed a disdainful smile. But what's the use of being fast? This idiot actually wants to compete with me in grip strength? Who doesn't know that Pang Sanlang's strength is the strongest in Tokyo? Aha! So painful. Before Pang Sanlang could finish this confident thought in his heart, a voice suddenly rang out. He felt a heart-wrenching pain from his right hand. It was as if someone was using an iron clamp to clamp his bones. In terms of hand strength, how could Pang Sanlang compare with the demon child Saito from Saito Guild Hall? Saito was a genuine martial arts master. His kung fu was unparalleled in the world. His grip strength could crush steel. But even if Saito had entered the Tao, he still couldn't gain the upper hand when he shook hands with Ryudo in the Tokyo Emperor Hotel not long ago, let alone a mere druggie. This wasn't the end. After squeezing Pang Sanlang's hand until the bones almost broke, Ryudo took the opportunity to flip his hand. Pang Sanlang's wrist was in pain, and he had no choice but to kneel on the ground. Plop. A muffled sound was heard. Under the stunned gaze of everyone in the room, Pang Sanlang's wrist was pressed to the ground. His face showed an expression of extreme pain, but he was almost unable to move. This won't do, big guy. What's the benefit of taking so many drugs? Other than scaring some trash. If you meet an expert like me, you will be played like a pig. When forcing a big guy to kneel on the ground, Ryudo didn't forget to use a mocking tone to say to him. Seeing that Pang Sanlang was pressed to the point that he couldn't breathe, and Pang Sanlang was shivering, President Arakawa hurriedly said, "Young Master Ryudo, even if you don't give them face, you have to give face to me, the host, right? What's the point of fighting and killing here?" That's right. What's the point of fighting and killing here? Remember, next time, don't make a move on an enemy that you can't beat. Not everyone is as benevolent as me. After hearing President Arakawa's words, Ryudo let go of the big guy in his hand and then said to the two brothers with a smile, "Beast, beast." After being taught a lesson by Ryudo, the Sanling brothers could only dejectedly return to their original seats, and didn't dare to provoke anymore. Hee. I don't remember any grudges between the Rulong group and the psychedelic Sanling. Although the two brothers' mouths are indeed a bit cheap, but young Master Ryudo doesn't need to be so angry. Just as Ryudo sat down, the leader of the Black Snake Alliance, Tessa, who was sitting next to him, asked with a smile, "There is indeed no grudges, then I just look down on drug sellers." After glancing at the Sanling brothers, Ryudo seriously said to them, "In the future, if I see your drugs appear in my territory, I will stuff all the drugs and explosives into your nostrils. I will do what I say." Okay, the meeting officially begins. This time, I have something to say to everyone. When Baron Creek saw the Sanling brothers' flushed faces, he hurriedly sighed and forcefully steered the conversation in the right direction. Really, why is this Ryudo Kiryu so difficult to deal with? He's simply a madman, he doesn't care about anyone. Originally, according to President Arakawa's idea, Ryudo Kiryu was the youngest among all the leaders here, so he should be the easiest to deal with. After all, the one who sat on the same level as the four leaders before was Hitomi Kazuma. Now that Kazuma wasn't in Nippon, a 16-year-old boy shouldn't be able to cause any trouble. Who knew that from the way he looked for a fight as soon as he arrived? This guy was 100 times more arrogant than his father, and he clearly didn't have any respect for these seniors. Sigh. Difficult to deal with. Forget it. I hope he can understand human language. When all the leaders sat at the table, Arakawa said seriously, "Regarding the incident that happened in Nippon yesterday, everyone should know about it." Is President Arakawa referring to the incident where the Metropolitan Police Department forced us to hand over the information of our members? After hearing this, Tessa was the first to react, and the other members also understood. Just yesterday afternoon, the Metropolitan Police Department indiscriminately demanded that all the Jigakudo in Tokyo submit and hand over the information of all the young members of their organization. This information included name, age, height, appearance, physique, weight, fingerprints, and so on. It was all very important personal information. This was simply outrageous in the eyes of the extreme do. After all, if so much information was handed over, wouldn't it be very troublesome for the brothers whose information was collected in the future? Would they come to find them if they did something? After all, they were in the side door. How could they hand over such important information to the police? It was simply suicide. But the problem was that the attitude of the Metropolitan Police Department was very strong this time. It was obvious that whoever didn't cooperate, they wouldn't be able to survive in Nippon in the future, even if they had the backing of the emperor. Under this tough attitude that completely ignored the law, the other extreme, were like the Rulong group. They had no choice but to hand over the information of some of their members. Don't you have any thoughts about this situation? How could we not have any thoughts? Bastard police. Hearing President Arakawa's provocative question, the Saburo brothers couldn't help but slap the table. After slapping, Saburo glanced at Ryudo. After seeing that he didn't have any reaction, he said, "Those guys have become more and more excessive in recent years. They simply don't give us a way out. If this continues, no one will be able to survive. Yes, if this continues, the extreme do in the Nippon area, which is us, will gradually be forced to the point of disbanding. President Arakawa, how do you plan to solve this?" "Ahem, if you trust me, I plan to form a hero alliance. Everyone will unite and fight against the Metropolitan Police Department's despicable methods." Under the conversation of the two, the president of the White Tiger Gang finally revealed his true purpose. Chapter 185. From the very beginning, President Arakawa was very confident about the establishment of the Renshia Alliance. After all, at this critical juncture, all the extreme organizations in Tokyo were in a state of panic, and they urgently needed a stabilizing force to stabilize themselves and the mood of the organization. Under such circumstances, the famous Renshia Alliance, took the initiative to stand up and lead everyone to resist the rude treatment of the Metropolitan Police Department. I was simply like a savior. In addition to this, there was another reason that made Arakawa feel very confident, and that was that psychedelic Saburo was originally one of them. Although most people didn't know this, even Saburo didn't know. In fact, psychedelic Saburo and White Tiger Gang were originally under the same boss. Both Arakawa and Saburo had been recruited by that lady long ago, and gradually reached their current position under her support. In other words, among the current 5 Kyoto organizations in Tokyo, 2/5 of the forces were originally one of them. As long as one of the other 3 agreed, the other 2 would be forced to follow. Otherwise, once the Renshia Alliance was formed, the organizations that were excluded would be subjected to all kinds of internal and external pressure. Under such circumstances, no organization could withstand it. However, if the Renshia Alliance was really formed according to Arakawa's idea, it would indeed reduce a lot of pressure for all the Kyoto organizations present. First of all, because of the formation of the alliance, the members of each Kyoto organization could all be added together, forming a huge force of tens of thousands of people. Under the unified management of this huge force, coupled with the unified allocation of the best team of lawyers, not only could they fight for the greatest right to speak in the dialogue with the Metropolitan Police Department, but they could also maximize the safety of their own industries to the greatest extent. Moreover, for example, the nightclub and videotape industry of the Black Snake Alliance, the anesthetic and forbidden drug industry of the psychedelic Saburo, the arms sales industry of the Big Dipper Alliance, and so on, were originally mutually beneficial. As long as everyone reached an agreement, these industries could also be interpenetrated. Under the care and support of the Rulon Group and the White Tiger Gang, they could even smoothly reach any corner of the country. At that time, the huge Kyoto Alliance from Tokyo would annex the other Kyoto organizations in Japan one by one, and its territory would become bigger and bigger. In the end, it could even sell its own industries overseas. At that time, the monetary benefits that the 5 great extreme Daos could obtain would probably be tens of times more than what they currently had. In other words, what Karakawa Genesis wanted to establish was not just a Renshia alliance, but an underground empire. An empire ruled by the extreme Dao, a powerful armed force that even the Metropolitan Police Department couldn't do anything to, and a world-class crocodile that was enough to leave their name in the annals of history. Therefore, when Akane Arakawa expressed his thoughts, there was an uproar around the table. It had to be said that Karakawa Chuang's eloquence was excellent. Moreover, the content of what he said had been carefully arranged. It was easy to listen to it and make one's blood boil. This level of verbal skill was a necessary basic skill for a politician, but there weren't many people who could hone it to this level. Therefore, it seemed that Karakawa Chinori was particularly trustworthy. Thus, Saburo couldn't help but be so excited that his eyes lit up. He waved his hands and used his sharp voice to shout, "Great! This is exactly what we want! Ha 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 ha!" Indeed, Tessa from the Black Snake Alliance also laughed and said, "In this situation, it would be great if someone could come out and take charge of the situation. After all, my territory is also in trouble." Indeed. If we can make more money and secure more sales channels, I won't object. The leader of the Big Dipper Alliance, Kai Yang, also nodded and used the simplest words to express his support. Indeed, when Karakawa Chinori made this suggestion, logically speaking, no one should disagree. After all, there were so many people targeting the extreme Dao out there. If everyone fought on their own, they would be nibbled away one by one. This was especially true for organizations like the Black Snake Alliance and the Big Dipper Alliance, which focused on profit-making. The stricter the laws of the world were, the more disadvantageous it would be for their business. They also needed a strong protective umbrella. Moreover, after forming an alliance, everyone would be able to make tens of times more money. Who wouldn't want to do such a good thing? Of course, thinking about it was just thinking. Whether or not he could actually do it was another matter altogether. Karakawa Chinori described a huge and beautiful blueprint for everyone present, But he knew that it was just bait to attract these idiots. Just like all professional politicians, when they made some promises, their goal was to get the votes in other people's hands. As for what would happen after they got the votes, who would care? After all, what was done, and it was up to them to explain or not to explain. At that time, as long as the Renxiao alliance was formed, Karakawa Chinori and Saburo would quickly clean up the other three extreme Dao with the help of their boss, and replace them with their own people. At that time, that person would be the uncrowned king of the entire Japanese underground world. In addition to the forces that she already controlled, it could be said that she could control the existence of this country. Very good. Looks like Tessa and Kai Yang have no problems. Only this kid is left. After hearing Tessa and Kai Yang's support, Karakawa Chinori smiled in his heart. Then he looked at the only one who didn't say anything, the young master of the Rulon group, Ryudo Kiryu. Since Karakawa Chinori expressed his intention to form the Renxiao alliance, Ryudo didn't say anything. It wasn't until Karakawa Chinori looked at him that the young master slowly raised his head. Very good. Ryudo showed a happy smile and clapped. President Karakawa can have such a bold idea and broaden your vision. You are indeed a senior in the underworld. You're too polite. We're all here to make a living. We just want to eat our fill and wear warm clothes. This old man is just taking advantage of the situation. After replying to Ryudo with a smile, Karakawa Chinori looked at Saburo next to him. Saburo suddenly stood up and said seriously, "But although it's an alliance, we still need a leader. After all, soldiers can't move without a general, and snakes can't move without a leader. Someone needs to be able to coordinate everything." Yoho, I didn't expect a drug addict like you to be so cultured. Not bad, not bad. Ahem. Ignoring Longdo's mockery, Subaru continued, "To be the leader of this alliance, you must first have enough experience in this industry. Only then will you be able to convince the masses. Secondly, you must have enough ability to do things well." That's how it should be. Kai Yang nodded. Since that's the case, I'm sure everyone here knows who the leader of the alliance will be, right? At this point, Subaru cast his gaze towards President Arakawa, who was sitting upright and ready to stand up and speak at any moment. That's right, he is. Originally, Saburo stood up and was about to extend his hand to President Arakawa, who was next to him, and invite him out, as if he was introducing an award-winning celebrity. But just as Saburo extended his hand, a figure quickly appeared between him and President Karakawa. "Aya, Saburo, you're too polite. I know I'm very good, but there's no need to invite me out with such fanfare." Under everyone's shocked gazes, Ryudo suddenly appeared in front of Saburo and grabbed his hand. Then, he shook it up and down with a smile on his face. At first glance, it seemed like Saburo was going to recommend Ryudo as the leader of the Renxiao alliance. When this strange situation occurred, Saburo and Karakawa Chinori were instantly stunned. Was there a mistake? This kid was too shameless. How could he come out and cut him off? After coming to his senses, Saburo hurriedly shook off Ryudo's hand. He gulped and said with a smile, "I'm sorry, young Master Ryudo. The person I'm talking about isn't you. I'm talking about President Karakawa. Not me." Hearing this, Ryudo squinted his eyes and asked in an unhappy tone, "What were the two conditions you said to be the leader? Say it again." "First, you have to have enough experience in this industry. Second, you have to have enough ability. You seem to." "I don't have experience. I don't have ability." Suddenly, Ryudo seemed to have heard something unbelievable. He raised his hands and said in a serious tone, "How many years have I been in this industry? At the very least, it should be a few months, right? That's not considered experience. I just beat up your brother. Isn't that ability? A few months? A few months. What the hell are you talking about? And beating up my brother counts as ability? If it wasn't for the fact that the person who said those words was the willful and overbearing Tong Sheng Ryudo, Saburo really wanted to go up and slap him away. After all, everyone present here was an extreme Dao leader who had been in this business for at least 10 years. There was even an extreme Dao living fossil like Arakawa Chuangzu here. How could someone like Arakawa Chuangzu, who had only been in the dragon battle for a few months, be shameless enough to talk about it? You're really shameless, right? That's right, Ryudo really wasn't shameless. After all, as long as he wasn't shameless, others would be the ones to be embarrassed. This kid, he seems to be trying to cause trouble. Don't tell me he really wants to steal my position as the leader? Seeing Ryudo Kiryu jump out and tease Saburo, who was in charge of being the supporting character, Karakawa Chinori felt something was amiss. Karakawa Chinori finally felt that something was amiss, as if the train was about to derail. Chapter 186. This Renshia alliance might not be that important to other people, but to Karakawa, it was his life. This was not a metaphor, but a reality. If Karakawa couldn't complete this mission and gather all of Tokyo's Extreme Dao into an Extreme Dao alliance and offer them to that person, then this Extreme Dao alliance would be destroyed. Then, the life of this Extreme Dao living fossil would disappear along with the failure of this mission. He was very clear about this. Karakawa was over 70 years old, but he still didn't want to die. Not only did he not want to die, but he also had a son, a daughter, and a grandson. Karakawa didn't want his family to die. For this Renshia alliance was willing to sacrifice all of Tokyo's Extreme Dao without caring about other people's lives. Anyway, I'm doing this for my family, so they should forgive me. Arakawa Chinori had seen in some movies that no matter how many bad things the villain did in the movie did, as long as he did it for his father, mother, son or daughter, he would be able to clear his name immediately. Humans were such simple creatures. In other words, sympathy was such a cheap and useful thing. However, compared to clearing his name, Karakawa cared more about his mission. First, he had to complete the Renshia alliance and become the president. Hence, when Baron Chuan saw Long Do suddenly appear to steal the limelight, his gaze instantly sharpened. Sensing Karakawa's anger, Shaosaburo hurriedly said, "Young Master Ryudo, I don't care if you want to make fun of me, but you can't joke about being the president." "What?" Ryudo sneered. "You think I'm joking? You think I don't deserve to be the president? You know what you're doing, right?" If Shaosaburo had enough confidence, he would have shouted this out, but he didn't dare. Therefore, the leader of the psychedelic trio had no choice but to look at the other two leaders, Tessa of the Black Snake Alliance and Kai Yang of the Big Dipper Alliance, as if he wanted them to say something. In fact, from the very beginning, as long as the real chivalrous alliance was formed, there was nothing to discuss about the alliance leader. Everyone was well aware of this. Psychedelic San Lang and his brother looked sloppy, so it was hard for them to convince the crowd. Although Miss Tessa from the Black Snake Alliance was capable, she was in the nightclub business and didn't have enough presence. Although Kai Yang from the Big Dipper Alliance had a strong presence, he wasn't good with words and didn't like to communicate with others. As for the Rulon group, if Kazuma Kirishima was still around, he would be qualified to become the leader. However, it was not Kirishima who came, but his son Ryudo. Please, a 16-year-old kid leading the entire Kyoto and Tokyo, and becoming the leader of 10,000 people. No one would believe it. If he really did that, wouldn't the Renshia alliance become a joke? Thus, Shaosaburo felt that as long as Kai Yang and Tessa weren't stupid, they would definitely not push the position of leader to Ryudo. And if the two of them wanted to sit in this position, it would be impossible for them to do so under the joint efforts of Shaosaburo and Shirakawa Chinori. It had to be said that Shaosaburo's thinking made sense. After being glanced at by him, Tessa couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. Young Master Ryudo, choosing a leader is a serious matter. It doesn't seem good to make such a ruckus. Indeed. Also, you guys won't be able to come up with a result. Why don't we use the simplest method, an anonymous vote? Other than Tessa, Kai Yang, who was sitting at the side, was silent for a while. Then he made a very constructive suggestion. Voting. Since there were 5 people here, whoever felt the most suitable to be the leader could directly write their answer on a piece of paper and vote anonymously. In the end, the person with the most votes would be the leader of the Renshia alliance. All the other members would have to respect him and listen to his orders. What, this guy Kai Yang still knows how to say something nice. After hearing Kai Yang's suggestion, Akaragawa Chinori quickly said, yes, this old man agrees. Not only is this efficient, but it can also avoid gossip. Voting? Are you sure you want to do this? Ryudo frowned when he heard this. He put on an unhappy face. Voting is the fairest way. Young Master Rulong Group. If you don't want to, you don't have to participate. Kai Yang glanced at Ryudo and said in an emotionless tone. And Tessa on the side added, yes, and before voting, we have to write a written pledge to prove that we obey the results of this vote, and that we absolutely respect the leader's leadership. Otherwise, it would be boring if we don't admit it after voting. Writing a pledge? That's good. Immediately, Shaosaburo also quickly shouted, I support. If you want to make a living, you have to pay attention to credibility. Write it clearly in black and white, and put your fingerprint. I guarantee that no matter what the result is, you can't go back on your words. That makes sense. Then go get someone to bring paper, pen, and ink. Seeing that things were developing in the direction he wanted to see the most, President Akaragawa also quickly ordered the subordinates waiting outside to prepare paper, pen, and ink. In the world of extreme Tao, as long as the signature and fingerprint were put, it meant that the pledge was effective. If it was violated, it would be a crime of disobedience. The lightest punishment would be cutting off the finger as an apology. After President Huang Chuan picked up a pen and paper and wrote down the formation document of the Renxiao Alliance, he signed his name and left his handprint first. The document was then passed to everyone's hands. Shaosaburo, Tessa, and Kai Yang looked at the document, then signed their names and pressed their fingerprint on it. They all agreed with the content written on the document. When it was Ryudo's turn, he picked up the document and looked at it again and again. He looked very unhappy. Hee. Ha 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 ha. Stinky brat, you have nothing to say now. Seeing his unhappy look, Shaosaburo couldn't help but laugh in his heart. Now the Rulong Group had a difficult choice in front of them. Ryudo could either choose to vote or leave with a sullen face. However, if Ryudo left, then his Rulong Group would definitely be ostracized by the Renxiao Alliance. With all kinds of internal and external troubles, there was no doubt that the Rulong Group's future path would be very difficult to walk. Fine, I'll sign it. I'm not afraid of you. After looking at it for a few seconds, Ryudo signed his name and pressed his fingerprint on it. Very good. The fish was in the net, and the dog was in the cage. Now it was time to close the net. Then, under the arrangement of President Arakawa, who had a smile on his face, the group members outside brought in a box, a few blank slips of paper, and a ballpoint pen. Now let's start the voting. No matter who votes, you can't complain about the final result. This is written in black and white. Does anyone have any objections? No. No problem. Let's do it. Oomph. Other than Ryudo, who snorted unhappily, the others agreed very quickly. They all turned around and wrote down their candidate for the alliance leader on the slips of paper. The box where the slips of paper were placed was checked by everyone one by one to ensure that there were no traps inside. In other words, the results of this vote would definitely not have any problems with fraud. Great. The mission that the Lord had given them was finally about to be completed. After watching everyone toss their slips of paper into the ballot box, Baron Chuan breathed out a sigh of relief as he tossed the slip of paper with his name into the box. God knew how much pressure he was under in today's meeting. After all, if the alliance failed this time, the result would be very ugly. Arakawa Chuang couldn't lose. He couldn't afford to lose. However, even though Ryudo Kiryu was involved in the process, the final result shouldn't be a problem. After everyone finished voting, Arakawa Chuang said with a smile, "Then let's not waste any more time. As the host, I will count the votes on the spot." Shaosaburo quickly said, "Of course, President Arakawa, please." So, Arakawa Chuang turned the box in the center of the table upside down and let the 5 slips of paper fall on the table. He reached out his hand that was so old that his skin was sticking to his bones. He gently picked up one of the slips of paper and opened it in front of the other 4 people. On the first slip of paper, the familiar name Arakawa Chuang was written. It's me? Thank you for your support. Chapter 187. After this terrifying result appeared, Akakawa Chuangshir felt his vision go dark, and he almost fainted on the spot. How? How is this possible? This is impossible? Is there something wrong with my eyes? He quickly put his hand on his forehead and looked at the words on the notes again and again. Akakawa Chuangshir, Ryudo Kiryu. These two names did not have a single word that was the same. It was impossible to misread them, and it was even more impossible to miswrite them. Wait, this is not right. This is impossible. This is... Just as President Arakawa was shocked silly by this unexpected scene, Subaru abruptly slammed the table and looked at the other three people, as if he had seen a ghost. However, when Xiaosaburo looked at Ryudo, Tessa, and Kai Yang, he realized that these three people did not seem to be surprised by this unexpected result at all. Instead, they looked calm. Something's wrong. We've been tricked. These three people must have discussed this beforehand. Xiaosaburo was an old fox who had been in the underworld for more than 10 years. When he saw the expressions of these three people, he already knew what was going on. There were a total of 5 votes. Xiaosaburo and Akakawa Chuangshir naturally voted for the latter. Therefore, only when Ryudo, Tessa, and Kai Yang voted for Ryudo would there be such an unbelievable result. However, from the attitude of the two leaders of the Black Snake Alliance and Big Dipper Alliance towards Ryudo, it was impossible for them to vote for Ryudo. Instead, they had been leaning towards President Akakawa's side. However, the truth was better than guessing. From the final voting results, Tessa and Kai Yang's actions of leaning towards President Akakawa's side were 100% just a performance to fool people. And most importantly, it was actually Kai Yang who proposed the secret vote, and Tessa who proposed the written agreement in advance. These two actions seemed to be helping President Akakawa to stabilize the situation. But in fact, they were digging a hole for the other two to jump into. Voting to resolve this, right? We have 3 people on our side, and you have 2 people on your side. Are you going to vote? Let's see which side has more people in the end. After throwing, you realize that you have been tricked, right? It doesn't matter. The deed of formation of the Renxia Alliance has your signatures and fingerprints. Do you want to deny it? Would he still want to work in this industry in the future? In this way, Ryudo played the bad guy, while Tessa and Kai Yang played the good guy. It could be said that Xiaojo Arakawa and Xiaojo Saburo were completely played in the palm of their hands. This wasn't just a case of losing the wife and losing the soldier, but losing the entire family's life. You 3. What a scheme, what a scheme! After noticing this, Subaru couldn't help but point at the 3 extreme Dao leaders, who were sitting at the table, with a happy and content expression. He simply wished he could grab them and hang them on the spot. What is he talking about? Why don't I understand? Tessa shrugged with a smile, looking innocent. I don't know. Weren't you very keen on voting before? Now that the results were out, what should he do? Can't afford to lose? Kai Yang was even more direct. He clasped his hands together and looked at Subaru with a sharp gaze. As if he dared to say no, he would open a hole in his head. You, Ryudo Kiryu, is this your plan? While Subarang was speechless from these two's retorts, President Huang Chuan, who was almost paralyzed in his chair, slowly raised his head, looking towards that extreme Dao young master whose expression had unknowingly become extremely calm. From the moment Ryudo Kiryu entered this room, he gave off a feeling of brainless and unhappy. He was arrogant and crazy, and his expression was very exaggerated. One look, and one could tell that he was a stinky brat without any foundation. But after everything was settled, Ryudo returned to his usual calm expression, making people feel that this guy was even a bit unfathomable. If you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. This old saying is very reasonable, right, President Arakawa? At this point, the corners of Long Do's mouth curled up, revealing an expression of the plan has worked. Indeed, if you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. In this information age, A lot of things couldn't be hidden just because you wanted to. Especially when Ryuto Kiryu had a group of very powerful companions. 1.5 hours ago, Ryuto received a letter from the White Tiger Society. There's definitely something wrong with that guy called Arakawa Soyu. There's probably some conspiracy behind this invitation. After explaining the situation to Colored Glaze said firmly on the phone. Ryuto heard this and asked with some confusion, "Why do you say that? I've seen the president of the White Tiger Society at an event before. He's a piece of trash that talks about benevolence and righteousness. But in fact, he's a piece of trash with a belly full of evil tricks. What kind of hero is he?" When mentioning Arakawa Soyu, Colored Glaze mercilessly scolded him, as if she didn't care about that person at all. In fact, that was indeed the case. As the young lady of the Kamiyoshi family, Colored Glaze had seen all kinds of scum since she was young. Anyway, when she walked around those upper-class banquets, she would meet either scum or scum. Therefore, Colored Glaze was very good at identifying scum, and she was also very clear about the relationship between jidaichi and politicians. Before meeting Ryuto, Colored Glaze had always thought that all jidaichi were dogs raised by politicians. They were scum dogs that did some dirty work for the scum, that appeared to be working for the people on the surface. The White Tiger Society was obviously this type of scum. Therefore, Arakawa Soyu considered himself as a hero in jidaichi. This kind of stupid words was more than enough to fool people who didn't know the business. But it was impossible to fool Colored Glaze. After that, Ryuto immediately called Sensible and asked Sensible to help check the accounts of Arakawa Soyu and the White Tiger Society. He wanted to see their financial situation. From the information that Sensible found, the White Tiger Society's financial situation was quite good. It was so good that it was very surprising. After all, this organization was the same as the Rulon Group. They were not involved in profiteering industries such as anesthetics, firearms, nightclubs, etc. However, the White Tiger Society was much richer than the Rulon Group. In this era, it was very difficult for a jidaichi who didn't do these dirty jobs to survive. Just look at how poor the Rulon Group was before Ryuto came. Between money and face, one could only choose one. Of course, there was no reason to accept both. However, the White Tiger Society was able to accept both. In particular, their president Arakawa Soyu had a very vague financial source. Even Sensible found it very difficult to find out. The accounts that send money to Arakawa Soyu are very complicated. I asked Gao Yuan to probe through his channels. In the end, it pointed to a few non-profit organizations. Non-profit organizations? What's that? It's a type of organization that doesn't belong to any government or established by any country. It's usually defined as a non-profit public welfare organization, such as environmental protection, human rights, and environmental protection. It sounds very high and mighty. It's just a saying. Most of these organizations talk about activism, but in their hearts, they only think about business. Their purpose is either to make money or to mess with people. They have a lot of money behind them. You'd be stupid to believe them. Money behind them. In other words, the person who sent money to that old man is the one behind him? Yes. And this money behind him is also supporting another jidaichi organization called Psychedelic Saburo. Psychedelic Saburo? Wasn't that the trashy jidaichi that sold anesthetics and banned drugs? After hearing this news, Ryuto had a new understanding of Arakawa Soyu. This old man used the name of chivalry to fool people in Tokyo, but he actually had a big money backer behind him. Moreover, he had the same boss as Psychedelic Saburo. What was Psychedelic Saburo? In the words of Mr. Fujiki, it was a complete piece of trash in society. They specialized in selling anesthetics and banned drugs to make huge profits. They were trash that deserved to die 100 times. The White Tiger Gang and Psychedelic Saburo had the same power behind them. In that case, there was a reason why President Arakawa called so many jidaichi over for a meeting. 5 jidaichi organizations. 2 of them are one. If the other 3 can't come to an agreement, then the direction of this meeting will be decided by these 2 organizations. At this moment, Colored Glaze suggested, Ryudo, immediately contact the leaders of the Black Snake Alliance and the Big Dipper Alliance. Tell them about the account problems that Sensible and Gao Yuan investigated. Also, ask them to advance and retreat together in this meeting. Is it enough to advance and retreat together? Should we do something else? If I'm not wrong, Arakawa will probably ask for an alliance or something. At this time we must do this, and do it again. Just like this, under Colored Glaze's arrangement, Ryudo successfully got in touch with Tessa and Kai Yang. After talking for a while, they came to an agreement about this meeting. After all, the leaders of the two Jidaichi organizations weren't idiots. When they knew that Arakawa and Saburo were one family, they naturally understood why the Chivalry Alliance was proposed by the two of them. Just as Longdo expected, these two fellows were planning to drag us down with them. Understanding this, Tessa winked at Kai Yang and began the following series of performances. In short, the leader of the Chivalry Alliance is now me. No one has any objections to this, right? After the vote for the leader, Ryudo slowly stood up from his chair and said to the two losers, Arakawa Chinori and Saburo, with a smile. Without waiting for their reply, Ryudo continued with a smile. Of course, no objections. After all, the agreement is here. Whoever dares to object will become the enemy of the entire Jidaichi world. I guarantee in the name of the Chivalry Alliance that they will die a horrible death. Chapter 188. It's over. It's over. After hearing Longdo's arrogant words, Subaru's forehead couldn't help but drip with sweat. Why? Why did it turn out like this? It's us, it's us. We were the ones who plotted against them first. Whether it's the secret collusion, the plan, or the meeting, we were the ones who came first. But why did it turn out like this? Why did we become the ones who were plotted against? Xiao Saburo did not expect the situation to turn out like this. What should I do now? The Renxiao Alliance had been formed. Everyone had signed their names, and even left their handprints on the formation document. If he went back on his words now, then Psychedelic Saburo and White Tiger Gang would have no place in the entire Extreme Dao. Xiao Saburo was sweating more and more as he thought about this. His clothes were soaked. Just as Xiao Saburo was at a loss of what to do, Akuragawa took a deep breath and said with a smile, "Very good. Since young Master Ryudo has been elected as the leader, then we can only follow his lead." Ryudo smiled and gave Akuragawa a thumbs up. As expected of Akuragawa, "You're so generous. You're able to let go of things. Leader, you're too kind. To celebrate the formation of the Renxiao Alliance, let's have a good time here." Clap clap. As soon as Akuragawa finished speaking, he clapped his hands and signaled the people outside to come over. This is the signal to attack. Is Akuragawa going to risk his life? After hearing these two claps, Subaru suddenly felt all the hair on his body stand up, and a cold current enveloped him from head to toe. At the end of the Renxiao Alliance plan, there was an emergency plan that could only be used if there was no other way. That was to call people in and kill everyone here. Before the meeting started, Akuragawa had already gathered hundreds of elite fighters from the White Tiger Gang. They were armed with all kinds of weapons and even guns. They were lying in ambush in the Star Python apartment. No matter how good Ryudo was at fighting, in the face of a group of gun-wielding Extreme Dao, he could only surrender. This was Arakawa Genesis' final killing move. There was a well-known unspoken rule on this street, and that was that even if there was a conflict, no weapons could be used. Otherwise, one would be spurned and besieged by all the Extreme Dao experts. Therefore, it was even more forbidden to use force in the Star Python apartments. Even if one wanted to use force, they could only use their fists to solve the problem. Otherwise, they could forget about continuing in this industry. However, when he was preparing his plan, he didn't seem to have thought about this unspoken rule at all. Anyway, he didn't plan to stay in Extreme Dao anymore. He already had plans to leave. As long as I organize the League of Heroes and Heroes, and hand it over to that lord to manage, I can leave this small island with turbid air, and head to the fresh air of free America, to live a brand new life with my family. In order to achieve this goal, Arakawa Chuang didn't care about the rules of the underworld and directly attacked. And the current situation was the final moment where the old president was ready to risk his life. Ryudo and the other two extreme Dao leaders' response was far beyond Arakawa Chuang's expectations. The league was successfully established, but he didn't get the position of the leader. Wasn't this just making a wedding dress for someone else? At this point he could only kill Ryudo, Kaiyang, and Tessa, and use force to unify these extreme Dao groups. Although this wasn't in line with his initial expectations, Arakawa Chuang had no other choice now. After all, the position of the leader fell to Ryudo, which was equivalent to sentencing this old man and his family to death. Might as well go all out. If it really didn't work, then everyone would die together. Who's afraid of who? Clap clap. With this thought, Arakawa Chuang clapped his hands and signaled the group of people lying in ambush outside to rush in and kill the three extreme Dao leaders. A second passed, and there was no response from outside. 5 seconds passed, and there was no response from outside. 10 seconds passed, and there was still no response from outside. What's going on? Why did the people I arranged? What's wrong? President Arakawa, didn't you say that you wanted us to have fun here and drink together? At this moment, Ryudo stood up slowly and walked to Arakawa Chuang's side. When Ryudo came close to him, a hint of panic flashed in the old president's eyes, and his body shrunk slightly. But even so, he still forced himself to say, This, maybe my people are distracted. I'll go out and urge them. No need to go. I know where they are, Ryudo said as he took out a small tablet from his inner pocket. He casually turned on the tablet and transferred the image to the position where the surveillance camera was recording. The moment the image appeared on the tablet, Arakawa Chuang felt cold all over, and his scalp went numb. Because in that image, the group of White Tiger Gang subordinates that he had arranged were piled together like garbage. Almost all of them were tied up tightly with ropes. When the old hero was dumbfounded, Ryudo reached out and patted his face and smiled. How about it? President Arakawa, why don't you show me what you have? Let's see if you have more trump cards, or I have more trump cards. You. Who exactly are you? My people have already controlled all the surveillance cameras in the Star Python apartment. You don't think that we won't find out when so many of your people come in from the area you control, right? There were thousands of surveillance cameras inside the Star Python apartment, and these cameras were also managed by the 5 extreme Dao regions. That was, each extreme Dao region would monitor an area. Before the meeting began, Arakawa Chuang asked his people to sneak up from the surveillance area controlled by Psychedelic Saburo and the White Tiger Gang. He thought that he had done it very discreetly, but in fact, he had already hacked all the cameras in the apartment. There was nothing that the current Rulong group could not see. Therefore, after cutting off the vision of Psychedelic Saburo and the White Tiger Gang, the Rulong group cooperated with the Big Dipper Alliance and the Black Snake Alliance to wipe out all the enemies in the apartment. It was 3 against 2, not to mention that one side had come prepared, while the other side had been attacked passively. All kinds of cameras, radios, and cell phone communications had been cut off. In an instant, they had turned from an organized army into a group of scattered soldiers. With such a huge gap, the conflict between the two sides naturally started and ended quickly. Boom! The next moment, the door of the room was kicked open from the outside. Many apex cultivators dressed in black rushed in with guns and blades in their hands. They pointed their guns at Arakawa Chuang, Skinny Saburo, and Fat Saburo. Obviously, when the voting was still going on in the room, the battle outside had already ended, and it ended with Ryudo, Kaiyang, and Tessa winning. After a while, we will take over your territories and assets. From today onwards, Psychedelic Saburo and the White Tiger Gang will no longer exist, and only 3 of the 5 extreme Dao in Tokyo are left. After leaving Arakawa Chuang, who was scared out of his wits, Ryudo, Kaiyang, and Tessa came to the front of the group of subordinates and looked at the few bastards who were forced to the corner and trembling. It's over, it's all over. When Arakawa Chuang realized this, he couldn't help but kneel on the ground, and at the same time, A strange smile appeared on his face. Hee. Ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. He was laughing, crying, and drooling. His body was constantly trembling, and the originally solemn kimono on his lower body had a trace of yellow water stain. He looked like an old madman who had reached the end of his road. From a certain perspective, Arakawa Chuang had given up thinking, because he knew that no matter how he thought, it was useless, and it was impossible to change this desperate situation. But Skinny Saburo, who was hiding behind Fat Saburo and leaning against the wall with this old man, didn't think so. He didn't give up on his life. Damn it! I knew this old man was unreliable. In the end, I can only rely on myself. Although I don't want Fat Saburo to eat that thing. It seems like there's no other way, or else we will all die here. Looking at the dozens of guns in front of him, Skinny Saburo could only pat the back of his brother in front of him and whispered, "Fat Saburo, take that thing out and eat it." That thing. Fat Saburo turned his head and asked in confusion. "It's the paper I gave you before. Hurry up." "Oh, this thing." Suddenly, Fat Saburo reached out and tore his sleeve and took out a piece of paper that looked like a matchbox. The paper looked like some kind of ink paper, and it was stained with an ominous black color, giving people a strange feeling. No matter how you look at it, this thing didn't look like something that should be eaten. But Fat Saburo swallowed it without hesitation. Something's wrong? Seeing this guy's action, everyone present felt that something was wrong. So Kai Yang shouted without hesitation, "Shoot! Kill them!" Bang! 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 With the leader's order, the dozens of black suits in front immediately pulled the trigger of their guns, and fatal bullets were fired at the three people in the corner. Whoa, 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 whoa. But as the gunshots sounded, Fat Saburo also reached out his big hand and grabbed the table in front of him and used the huge round table as a shield in front of the three people. Bang! Boom! But how could such a table block the bullets of the guns? After at most 1 or 2 seconds, the table exploded from the bullets, and Arakawa Chuang, who was panicking, was directly shot into a hornet's nest. However, although Akanagawa Chuang was killed on the spot, the huge figure that appeared with the strange smoke was still standing straight under the storm of bullets. Chapter 189. Smoke. Why is there smoke? Moreover, this strange smoke seemed to be coming from that big guy's body. Just when the round table was smashed, and the body of Arakawa Chuang fell to the ground, everyone looked at the burly figure standing in the same place. One of the two leaders of Psychedelic Saburo, Fatty Saburo, originally had a physique that was far stronger than ordinary people. He was born with divine strength, and with the help of a large number of forbidden drugs, he looked even more tall and strong. His body was incomparably burly, like a mighty and domineering king statue. However, when the dozens of bullets smashed the round table and bombarded the huge body, a strange scene appeared. Huff, 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 huff. At this time, Fatty Saburo's hands were in front of his body, using his thick arms to cover the weakness of his face, and his lower body was standing very steadily, slowly exhaling. The dozens of bullets that were fired at him just now almost all hit his body, and no less than 20 bullets were hit. Even if most of these bullets only hit the arms, body, and legs, it was already a state that ordinary people could not withstand. However, after being hit by so many bullets, Fatty Subaru's body emitted a dense fog. It was as if a strange heat was rising from every pore of his body, causing the fatty's skin to turn red. Thump, thump, thump. At the same time, his heart also issued a terrifying beating sound like a drum. The sound could be heard clearly even from more than 10 meters away, and it was not like the heartbeat of a normal human. Ding, ding, ling, ling, ling. Just when everyone was dumbfounded looking at the huge body that suddenly changed, a strange crisp sound came from the ground. It was bullets, dozens of bullets that just hit Fatty Saburo's body. These bullets that hit his body that suddenly became several times stronger did not go too deep, but only stopped outside the skin and muscles, and were immediately pushed out by the continuously expanding muscles. Unknowingly, Many parts of the man's body quietly underwent a terrifying change. His height had increased from 1.8 meters to about 2 meters. His arms, neck, legs, and even his torso had obviously become thicker. His muscles had also begun to bulge out of his clothes. He did not look like a body of flesh and blood at all. Instead, he looked more like bricks. What monster? What's wrong with this person? Seeing the sudden changes on Fatty Saburo's body, everyone in the room was stunned. Even the experienced Kai Yang and Tessa could not help but widen their eyes, with a look of disbelief. Indeed, what's wrong with this person? Or to ask a more direct question, is this guy really a human? To be able to withstand a handgun bullet, completely unnatural heartbeat, breathing, and the steam from the pores. All of this made Subaru look like a monster like the Hulk on TV. Moreover, it was accompanied by a strong sense of unreality, as if a monster on TV had come to the real world. As for this series of sudden changes, Long Do was definitely the one who understood what had happened the most out of everyone present. Before Pang Saburo ate the black paper, his personal attributes in the hooligan analyzer were as follows: name, Inada Saburo, age, 32 years old, attribute, wisdom LVL 1, physique LVL 4, courage LVL 3, insight LVL 2, charm LVL 1. After eating that black paper, and after his entire body underwent a complete transformation, his personal attributes became like this: name, Inada Saburo, age, 32 years old, attribute, wisdom LVL 1, physique LVL 5, courage LVL 5, insight LVL 1, charm LVL 1. How should he describe it? This guy had literally become a monster. Not only did this guy's physical ability increase from LVL 4 to LVL 5, reaching the highest level of superhuman realm. Furthermore, Fatty Saburo's courage directly jumped 2 times, from LVL 3 to LVL 5. What is the concept of LVL 5 courage? This is the true meaning: not fearing the heavens or the earth. Even if the heavenly emperor came, I would still dare to ride on top of his head and shit. Judging from Fatty Saburo's situation, it is impossible for him to have such terrifying courage, unless he is in a state of extreme excitement, which is also the state of forbidden drug enhancement. Therefore, the root of all these changes is undoubtedly the black paper that this guy just ate. His current rapid breathing, rapid heartbeat, abnormal muscle strength, and other conditions are obviously caused by some kind of forbidden drug, or super forbidden drug. Forbidden drug. In fact, this term is not just a simple drug, but a general term for all forbidden drugs that can cause abnormalities in the human body. At first, the place where humans use forbidden drugs is mostly on the battlefield, where flesh and blood splatters everywhere. Soldiers will take a series of synthetic drugs that have a significant central nervous system stimulating effect to reduce their fear of the battlefield. And with the continuous advancement of science, the place where forbidden drugs are used has become a sports field. But this does not prevent some people from secretly researching some drugs that can make people become superhuman in a short time. Clearly, the forbidden drug that Subaru was using right now wasn't something as simple as strengthening his muscles. Instead, it was an even more tyrannical Superman drug. This drug had directly increased his physique from international warrior to extreme Superman. After consuming this drug, it will bring about an extraordinary monster state. Of course, such an overbearing forbidden drug, the after effects of consuming it are also quite serious. But now Fatty Saburo is too lazy to care so much. Very good. Hell Butterfly has already shown its effect. After seeing the huge change in Fatty Saburo's body, Skinny Saburo, who was hiding behind him, nodded, laughed and said, "Fatty, let's go first." "Ugh, let's go." After hearing his boss's words, Fatty Saburo, who was gasping for breath, obviously somewhat delirious, suddenly widened his bloodshot eyes and swung his thick right arm towards the wall beside him. Boom! Following a loud bang, the concrete wall, which was at least 30 centimeters thick, was smashed into smithereens by the terrifying monster's fist. Dust and gravel powder filled the room. After punching a hole in the wall, Fatty Saburo reached out and grabbed his boss and jumped out of the hole in the wall. Jumping out of the room, The direction of the wall is the direction of the window. There is nothing outside. Only the vertical courtyard of Star Python apartment, which is hundreds of meters high. Although Ryudo and the rest are currently staying in room 408. This room 408 is actually a code word for Star Python apartment. The actual location is not on the 4th floor, but on the 18th floor. With such a high vertical distance like the 18th floor, if a normal creature falls, it will definitely be smashed to pieces. But right after Fatty Subaru jumped out with his big brother, his gorilla-like thick arms directly grabbed onto the outer wall of the apartment building. Creak! The 5 fingers that can almost crush steel penetrated the outer wall of the apartment, as if the wall is soft like bubbles under this guy's hand. Relying on the cushioning force of the wall with one hand, Fatty Saburo brought Skinny Saburo all the way down from the 18th floor like a monster in a movie, leaving behind 5 deep claw marks on the outer wall of the apartment. No way. Is this guy really a human? Suddenly Tessa, who came to the window and watched the 2 guys slide down, swallowed her saliva. At the same time, she couldn't help but reach out and pinch her slender and smooth thighs, wondering if she is dreaming. How is it possible? In the real world, how can someone directly jump down from the 18th floor and rely on one hand to hold the wall to cushion the impact until landing? It is just like shooting a Hulk movie without much Hulk. Just when everyone didn't know what to do, Long Do silently came to the hole that was blasted by Pang San Lang. Kai Yang, send someone to follow me and those 2 guys. Absolutely can't let them escape. Send someone. Wait, didn't you? After hearing Ryudo's words, Kai Yang couldn't help but look at him and wanted to say, aren't you here? Why did you send someone to follow you and those 2 guys? But halfway through Kai Yang's words, Ryudo's figure didn't hesitate to jump out of the hole. From the 18th floor in the air, he chased down. Even if the enemy is a monster with LV5 physique, Ryudo didn't feel fear. He even had a feeling of eagerness. This guy is looking for. But almost everyone who saw this scene almost wanted to say Ryudo, this guy is looking for death. But when Ryudo's body flew to the outside of the apartment, he used a more elegant way than Fatty Saburo to fly down the stairs. His slender body nimbly landed in the air. One foot stepped on the air conditioner on the 17th floor. Bang! The air conditioner that was stepped on made a muffled sound, but it didn't fall down because of this step. Whoosh! Then Ryudo once again jumped to the side, landed on the air conditioner on the 16th floor, and repeated this action. In the eyes of the people upstairs, this young master of the Rulon group was like a Spider-Man in a cartoon, nimbly moving around the air conditioner on the outside wall of the apartment, constantly quickly chasing down the Saburo brothers. An 18-story high-rise building. As long as one misstep, the entire vertical space could fall to their death. In such a dangerous area, relying on the air conditioner to continuously jump down, Ryudo's entire movement seemed so relaxed, as if he was walking on flat ground, as if he wasn't performing an amazing acrobatic performance, but strolling in his own corridor. Bang! Just as Long Do was about to land on the ground, Fatty San Lang, who was not far away, also fell to the ground with a bang. Instead, it continued to charge towards the 2 men like an enraged beast. Clearly, with the support of LV5 physique, ordinary handgun bullets had no effect on the current Pang San Lang. Unless they hit his eyes or other vital points, they would just tickle his steel body. Mamma mia! Just when the 2 patrol officers thought they were going to be crushed into meat paste, a slender figure rushed out from the side like lightning. Ancient Bajiquan, Iron Mountain Lean. In the next second, Ryudo stepped on the ground. Using the tremor kick, he twisted his body and slammed his shoulder into the left side of Pang Sabin's abdomen. Bang! When the 2 collided fiercely, a strong explosion sounded. The feeling wasn't like 2 living bodies colliding. Instead, it was like 2 trucks colliding at full speed. After the collision, the 2 unlucky patrolmen were also sent flying by the strong impact of the collision and fainted on the ground 4 or 5 meters away. This collision was earth-shattering. Ryudo's Iron Mountain lean was strong enough to send a dozen people flying. But when he collided with Pang Sabin's body, he felt as if he collided with an iron wall. At that moment, Ryudo felt a pain in his shoulder. The strong impact forced him back a dozen meters before he could stabilize his body and land on the ground. Of course, no matter how strong Pang Sabin's body was, after being hit by Ryudo, he still fell to the other side. He was like a soccer ball that was kicked away. He rolled on the ground until he reached the lawn of the park a dozen meters away. Apart from Pang Sanlang, who had been caught in his hand, was also sent flying. After Ryudo's Iron Mountain lean landed, the skinny guy felt as if he was hit by a truck. He fell to the ground in a daze. He saw stars and his head was bleeding. What the hell is going on? Before Pang Sabin could react, a hand like an iron clamp had already grabbed his throat and lifted his body from the ground. It was Ryudo. After all, Ryudo was the one who initiated the attack. The impact he received was not as strong as the other two brothers, so he quickly rushed over and grabbed the culprit's neck. He turned around and ran toward a remote factory outside the park. Let go of my big brother. After seeing the scene of his elder brother being taken away, Fatty Subaru also hurriedly got up from the ground. His eyes were red like an enraged bull as he chased after Long Jio. Just like this, the two sides went from one running and one chasing to one chasing and one running. That place should not be a problem. I have to control him as soon as possible. I can't let this guy continue to act recklessly. As he ran, Ryudo raised his head and looked at the nearby factory under the illumination of the night. It was especially quiet. Because it was already night, the factory was quiet. There was no one inside. Obviously, it was the best place to deal with this fat guy. Arriving at the interior of the factory, Long Do lifted the neck of Xiaosaburo, who was about to be strangled to death by him, and directly threw him up, letting him fall on a platform that was more than 10 meters high. Big brother. Pang Sabin, who followed behind, quickly wanted to save him, but Ryudo's figure had already arrived in front of him. In an instant, a fist suddenly flashed in front of Pang Sabin. Then he heard a crisp sound in front of him. Bursts of blood spurted out from the fat nose. Facing this monster who was obviously not human anymore after eating the drug, Ryudo obviously did not have any intention of holding back. He directly raised his hand and used an iron palm. It mercilessly smashed on Pang Sabin's nose. How could the fragile nose resist Ryudo's iron palm? After this palm, Pang Sabin's nose was almost completely broken. A broken nose would cause a large amount of blood loss. Moreover, this kind of injury would also cause severe pain. It would greatly reduce the enemy's fighting spirit. As if, unexpectedly, Pang Sabin, who received this heavy blow, did not have any reaction at all. His face was full of blood, his nose was crooked, but he immediately let out a beast-like cry. He reached out his hand and grabbed towards Ryudo's direction. Even with a broken nose, he did not even blink. Sure enough, this guy could not feel pain now. After dodging this fatal grab, Ryudo once again sized up this body whose skin had turned into a strange red color. It was gradually becoming less and less like a human. Modified human, enhanced human, or Frankenstein. This was Pang Sabin's current situation. The only way to stop this behemoth was to kill it. Even knocking it out would be difficult. After all, this guy's brain was probably secreting all kinds of hormones to ensure that it wouldn't faint. Even so, Ryudo did not feel that he would lose. After all, although Pang Sabin's physical strength was heaven-defying, he still did not know how to use martial arts. If a martial arts master like Saito Ryudo had LV5 physique, he could almost instantly kill the current Ryudo. Or it could be said that he could instantly kill anyone. However, Pang Sabin was still far from it. Kill. I will kill you. After a series of beast-like roars, Pang Sabin rushed over with a posture that gave people a sense of great pressure. Because of his super strong physical strength, this rushing momentum was like a human tank. Even Ryudo did not dare to face it head-on. Thus he dodged to the side. At the same time, he bent his body and used all his strength to kick the inner side of Pang Sabin's thick knee. This kick could be said to be extremely tricky, no matter what kind of monster it was. After being kicked from the inner side of the knee, it could only kneel forward. Bang! After the monster knelt on one knee, Long Do took the opportunity to press forward and quickly launched a storm of attacks. His pair of slender and powerful arms were like two soft whips filled with mercury, coupled with the ancient Bajiquan fist technique. In a short 2 seconds, he consecutively punched a dozen times. His attacks were extremely fierce. Because he did not have any apprehensions, Ryudo's every attack was accompanied by a sound of breaking air, as it solidly kicked Pang Sabin's vital points. Furthermore, it produced a loud sound of flesh and bone colliding. With Ryudo's current strength, if such a violent and murderous attack landed on an ordinary person, even if that person had 10 lives, it would not be enough to survive. Liver, abdomen, throat, back of head and heart. This was the first time that Ryudo did not hesitate to attack these vital points. But even if he attacked these vital points, he was still unable to cause any damage to Pang Sabin. Although Ryudo already felt that this guy had suffered serious injuries, but he always felt that no matter how he attacked, he was always missing that final kick, unable to let his attacks reach the deepest part. Good heavens, this guy is too durable, right? This is simply. Just when Ryudo's continuous attacks were about to be interrupted after a few seconds, a thick arm seized this opportunity and hugged his waist. Hey, hee catch. Here. Come. Obviously, Pang Sabin had been waiting for this moment. Although his consciousness was not very clear, the rich fighting experience was still engraved in every cell of this body. Taking advantage of the opponent's previous attack, and the short time before the opponent's new attack, the bulging muscular arm had already hugged Ryudo's waist. Then he suddenly began to exert force inwards. Go to hell. At this time, Fatty Subarang's thick arm tried to squeeze and break Long Do's lumbar spine. The latter immediately felt a tearing sensation, as if his body was about to be bent into a U-shape. Bastard. You forced me. But Ryudo would not allow himself to be captured without a fight. Before his waist was broken, he raised his empty left hand, and a small Uzi submachine gun appeared in his hand. Of all the martial arts, this was the submachine gun assassination technique. After taking out his Uzi submachine gun from the equipment slot, Ryudo directly stuffed the muzzle into Pang Sabin's nostrils and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Chapter 191. Tut tut tut. Tut 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 tut. The 9mm bullet directly exploded in Subaru's nostrils. The explosive force spread upward along the nasal bone, the frontal process of the maxilla, the frontal nasal process, and other parts of the body, all the way to the frontal bone, and even the brain. No matter how hard Subaru's body was now covered with steel-like muscles, the internal bones and organs would not change. Bang! As the bullet exploded in his head, the huge body finally fell backward. At the same time, the arm that was holding Long Do also lost the huge force that should have been attached to it. Hey! Hee. While falling, the man's face still had a strange smile. Coupled with his face full of blood and bones, the scene was particularly horrifying. But no matter how horrifying it was, Subaru was still a human. The bullet directly went through the nose and into the brain. This kind of injury was not something a Frankenstein could withstand. It was a real fatal injury. Therefore, after this big guy fell to the ground, his eyes rolled back, and his breathing and heartbeat stopped. He had completely seen a ghost. Finally, it's finally over. Just when Subaru's terrifying body fell to the ground and didn't get up again, Ryudo couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He relaxed his mind and sat down. It had to be said that the battle just now could be said to be the most difficult battle Ryudo had experienced so far. Although the battle with Saito was actually more dangerous, it didn't mean that it was difficult. After all, the battle ended quickly and didn't bring too much torture. But the battle with Subaru was completely different. The battle with this monster could be said to be enjoyable for Ryudo from both the physical and mental aspects. He was forced to the limit in both aspects. The strange body that seemed to have no effect no matter how he attacked, and the terrifying murderous aura that was more ferocious than a beast, made Ryudo feel a lot of pressure. Strictly speaking, the current Subaru was simply not a human, but a monster that couldn't be defeated and wasn't afraid of death. These strange creatures were not something that could be dealt with by fists and feet. It was something that demon hunters or zombie Taoists should do. If Long Do hadn't used the unethical submachine gun assassination technique to shoot out his nostrils, he might have been the one lying on the ground right now. It hurts, my waist almost broke. Phew. Suddenly, Ryudo lifted his shirt and looked at his waist. There was a deep purple mark on the back of his waist. It was like a huge python was deeply imprinted on his skin. However, this was still considered good. If Subaru had been strangled for a while longer, Long Do's waist and spine would have been completely broken. At that time, he would have to pay another 1 million yuan. Da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da. It's here. Come here quickly. Just as Ryudo was sitting on the ground to rest, Kai Yang rushed into the factory with his men. Because they planned to fight the monster that couldn't be penetrated by handguns, the members of the Big Dipper Alliance had already brought a lot of heavy firepower weapons. From shotguns to fully automatic rifles, to howitzers and even rocket launchers. These were the real weapons that the Big Dipper Alliance had. They looked very powerful. After all, this extreme do specialized in firearms. The firearms in their hands could be said to be the best on the island. If a fight really broke out, it would not be a joke. But now, no matter how powerful the heavy firepower was, it was useless because the monster that Kai Yang and his men were going to kill was now lying on the ground and turned into a huge monster corpse. What? It was already done. Relying on him alone? The moment he rushed into the factory, Kai Yang looked at Subaru, who was lying on the ground, and Ryudo, who was sitting next to him rubbing his waist. He couldn't help but have a look of disbelief. God! This was a monster that couldn't be penetrated by handguns. Ryudo Kiryu actually killed it by himself. This combat power was simply, should he consider joining the Avengers or something? After seeing this ally, Ryudo also extended his hand and smiled. Brother Kai Yang, can you give me a hand? Amazing, I'm impressed. Kai Yang walked over and helped Ryudo up and praised him with a tone of admiration. As everyone knew, the leader of the Big Dipper Alliance, Kai Yang, was a very taciturn, tough guy. He rarely praised people, and he used this kind of tone to praise people. This was simply unbelievable to his men. After Kai Yang brought people over, the next thing was simple. Fatty Subaru had caused such a huge ruckus just now. The Metropolitan Police Department would definitely be frantically sending people over here. But before they arrived, Ryudo and Kai Yang had already taken away all the bodies of Subaru and Subaru. Not a single hair was left, so the police didn't find anything. Then on the night of the same day, the entire underground world of Tokyo ushered in a wave of unprecedented perilous waves. The story of the White Tiger Gang and psychedelic Subaru, attempting to use the name of an alliance to murder the other 3 gang leaders, was spread all over the internet. Almost the entire underground world knew about the dirty deeds of these people. The name of chivalry collapsed overnight. Karakawa Soyoki went from a well-regarded big shot to a scum that was despised overnight. It seemed like his name would go down in history. At the same time, the Rulon Group, Big Dipper Alliance, and Black Snake Alliance led the 3 gangs to attack the headquarters of the White Tiger Gang and psychedelic Subaru. With the death or capture of Arakawa Genso and the Saburo brothers, the 2 extreme Dao organizations were like a group of dragons without a leader. Moreover, they were despised in name, causing them to be utterly defeated in the blink of an eye. When the sun rose the next day, the situation of the 5 gangs in Tokyo had completely changed. Most of the members of the White Tiger Gang, who didn't know the truth, were taken in by Ryudo and became non-staff members of the Rulon Group. The members of the psychedelic Subaru were either killed or expelled. They were banned from entering the Tokyo area. From Ryudo's point of view, most of the members of the White Tiger Gang were still men. They weren't hopeless. They were only confused by Karakawa Soyoki's chivalry before. That was why they followed this boss for so long. Moreover, they didn't do too many evil things before. They were the same as the Rulong group. However, the group of drug addicts in the psychedelic Sanlang were different. This organization was originally focused on selling all kinds of drugs. The internal members were naturally drug addicts and drug addicts. Each and every one of them had shifty eyes and pretended to be ghosts. For this group of garbage, Ryudo didn't plan to be soft at all. It was impossible to take them into his team. It was better to throw them into the Tokyo Bay as non-recyclable garbage to feed the fish. Therefore, the Tokyo Bay was particularly noisy that night. Groups of drug addicts and drug addicts were drowned in the bay with cement. Before they died, their mouths were stuffed with their favorite drugs. It was a worthy death. After everything calmed down, at noon the next day, Ryudo, Kai-Yang and Tessa, the two leaders of the gang, enjoyed the wine that the old guy Kara Kawasuki kept in the base of the White Tiger gang. Thank you so much for your help this time. Let me propose a toast to you too. On the table, Ryudo opened a bottle of aged white wine and filled it to the brim for Kai-Yang and Tessa. Then he raised his glass to toast them. It had to be said that the reason why this operation was so smooth was not only because Ryudo and the Rulong group were strong enough, but also because of the cooperation of the Big Dipper Alliance and the Black Snake Alliance. Don't say that. This time, we should be basking in your glory. After raising her glass, Tessa covered her mouth and smiled. Her face was flushed, and she looked refreshed. After a night of property confiscation, the two large gang organizations, the White Tiger Gang and the Psychedelic Subaru, were completely disintegrated and annexed. Naturally, the three gangs that took action reaped a lot of benefits. This included the addition of personnel, various assets and real estate, many connections, fame, and so on. It could be said that other than the Rulong group, the Big Dipper Alliance, and the Black Snake Alliance also earned a lot. This made Tessa smile from ear to ear early in the morning. At this time, the more she looked at Ryudo, the more she liked him. Indeed, if we let that fake hero's plan go smoothly, let alone taking advantage, I'm afraid we won't even be able to keep our own belongings. Speaking of this, Kai-Yang couldn't help but sigh. In fact, before yesterday, Kai-Yang still thought that Karakawa Soyuki was a well-deserved hero, but he didn't expect him to be a complete hypocrite, a piece of trash in the human world. If it wasn't for Ryudo seeing through his scheme and reaching an agreement with the other two gangs in time, the Big Dipper Alliance would really have ended in the end. Then, this Renshia Alliance would really become a game where Shozo Arakawa and the Saburo brothers worked together to harvest the leeks. The Dragon Group, Big Dipper Alliance, and Black Snake Alliance would definitely lose everything. Just like this, because everyone reaped a lot of benefits, the meal could be said to be enjoyable. Ryudo, Kai-Yang, and Tessa drank one cup after another, and the topics of conversation became more and more open. Especially when he found out that Ryudo, a Japanese devil, could actually speak his native language. Kai-Yang was even more delighted. He couldn't wait to become sworn brothers with him on the spot. At the table, Ryudo also told the two allies the identity of the boss behind the White Tiger Gang and the Psychedelic Subaru. After a full day of investigation, Sensible and Gao Yuan finally found out who the boss behind Karakawa Soyuki and the Subaru brothers were. Although the identity of the boss was hidden very well, as long as he moved in broad daylight, he would be exposed sooner or later. And the identity that was finally investigated shocked Ryudo and the others, because the boss behind the two gangs was actually the wife of the current Wuda Emperor, the current Empress Kohishinya. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.